OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Bang on 7:30 this morning. You're welcome along to OTB AM on Thursday, the 28th of January. Yes, it's Groundhog Day. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. It's not actually Groundhog Day. It just feels like it. Owen, good morning to you. How are you?
Very well. How are things?
It's not Groundhog Day because we have a very big story to speak about. Manchester United are back to being flaky.
You love momentum more than anybody else I've ever met in sport, Ger, and last night was a big old momentum swing in favour of Manchester City, it feels. We've got to remember a week ago, people were still, of course, very excited about where Manchester City were going, but we had just seen a Kevin De Bruyne injury. We had just seen Manchester United truly grind out another win via that Paul Pogba strike. What was it, last Wednesday? And it really felt that there was a chance that, yes, this is a great Manchester City team, but it's going to be sort of like 2012 when they will go toe-to-toe properly, or 2013, I should say, and there could be a proper Manchester title race. The events of the last 48 hours might put the pin in that a little bit. United are going to be devastated with that result last night, but they just weren't good enough to win the game. They didn't create enough chances, and it's a really disappointing development for their season. We've
been talking a good bit with Nathan over the last while, and he's been saying there's so much more to come from this Manchester United team. All we need is one of their front trio or four to find form or start scoring goals. And actually, I think it might have been a little bit of trolling, because they're not playing well at all at the moment. They really aren't. And that is an inherent issue. If you're going to have a title race, you need someone who's going to be playing really, really well. Obviously, Bruno is playing very well. And, you know, there's been some talk about him being a little bit tired recently. But they haven't had a striker who's been scoring loads of goals. And that's going to be an issue.
Well, Edinson Cavani is clearly their best number 9 in the squad. But it's also apparent that he's not going to be able to play every game. So you can't blame him for not starting him last night, but maybe does he play a little bit less on Sunday in the Cup, or like does do his minutes get managed at a point where he doesn't play anything except for the Premier League? That's probably what is required if they want to go on and actually win this thing, because the evidence of last night is that he is so important to how they play. Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, between them, none of them created a single chance against Sheffield United. So the stats are telling us this morning, which isn't really good enough from that attacking trio when we've seen the attacking quality that they've brought under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer over the last couple of years. I see Martial is probably the man who's going to be scapegoated for this more than anybody, considering the lack of threat he posed last night. But there's going to be plenty of blame to go around at the back as well.
Yeah, well, look, we should just stick with the front three for the moment. Greenwood looked dangerous for patches early on and then kind of faded from the game. There was one bit where I was like, ooh, we've just been saying that he's nowhere near as good as the other two at the moment, and his form isn't great, and he zipped through, dropped the shoulder, and a shot was blocked. So, it was definitely a chance. It was a proper chance. It might not show up in the stats like that, and it felt like, you're like, oh, actually, he's playing really well here. But then there was nothing else really from him for the rest of the game. Rashford's form's not great. Obviously love him as a human being, but his form's not great or consistent at the moment. He hasn't quite taken that step forward to be one of the best footballers in England who can carry a title challenge, which is actually the level that you think his talent is at. So that's been a bit disappointing. And then, Martial, maybe if Martial goes on to another club, he will have, or a different league, he will have the type of post-Manchester United career that, say, Mo Salah had when he left Chelsea the first time. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm just not convinced. And so, they definitely have an abundance of talent throughout the rest of the team. But the drop-off, when Shaw's playing as well as he is, and this is a league game, and your rivals have just won 5-0 the last night, why are you putting Telles in? And why is Lindelof not fit? The plan was to play Bailly, but then he got injured yesterday in training, picked up a knock. We don't know how serious it is. Why not just go back to Lindelof then? Are you managing those minutes too? What's the point of that? I don't know. Everything was great for Solskjaer up to this point, and then this result looks pretty bad. It's shocking, because Sheffield United are, by this stage, the worst team in the history of the Premier League after 19 games. So, it's fair to ask some questions, I suppose.
Yeah, they are. When we talk about the history of the terrible, terrible teams that break records at being terrible at football, it looks like Sheffield United might be a team who might not finish bottom of the Premier League. Like, I backed them to finish ahead of West Brom this season. They're a lot better than they were at the start of the season, and they have improved. But there are questions about United, and it does feel that, I don't know, is it a massive overreaction from everybody every time United lose a game, or actually do they tend to lose games in a way that uncovers a series of flaws? So you listed off there about 4 or 5 different things there that don't seem great with Manchester United. Ordinarily, if a team loses, especially after going on the run that they've gone on, there's either a bit of bad luck or 1 or 2 things that you can point to and say that's why they lost. But it does seem that there are a few things for them to fix. The thing is, how do you allow these things to be fixed and for Manchester United to be in a better position this time next year? And one of those questions is going to have to be around who is leading the line and what they do this summer. Do they go in and try and get Erling Haaland away from wherever he may go? Do they go back for Jadon Sancho? Because if the consensus is that Anthony Martial isn't going to be good enough for a long haul of a season like this to lead the line pretty much every single week, then he probably doesn't have a long-term future at the club, which is a really harsh thing to say. And I think Martial has shown some really great moments for Manchester United. But if he can't be trusted to lead the line week in, week out, then and challenge for a title, then that's probably the level he's pitching at the moment, and falling short. Like, it's harsh to point out any one person last night, because, as you say, Greenwood wasn't great either. Rashford wasn't amazing. Like, he was playing on the left again. Maybe he would prefer to be going up against a fullback who's bombing on every single time. I think most wingers would probably prefer that. And, like, obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold got roasted by him at the weekend. I don't think he's having a bad season at all, and I think he was actually better than Martial and Greenwood last night. So, like, it does seem that there is this big grey cloud that's after arriving all of a sudden, but there are a multitude of fixable things there, especially looking at next season if Manchester City go on and run away with this thing. Yeah,
I mean, fingers crossed they're not going to run away with it, but now all of a sudden they're top of the table and they have a game in hand, and all of their rivals, they're a point clear of Manchester United. With them, they have a game to play as well. So that lead, you would expect, will stretch out to 4 points, and then after that, Leicester are a point behind that, and then West Ham are another 5 points back off that. So suddenly the gap, it's not insurmountable, but every time that Liverpool play, we're really hoping that they're going to be able to somehow stretch a run together so that there is something of a title challenge, because very quickly Manchester City open up a 4 point gap. It gets to 5, it gets to 7, and early March, title race is completely finished, and we're like, oh, great, a very exciting battle to see who's going to finish between 4th and 7th, and hey, maybe one of those good teams might drop into it. Nah, like, it's not the same, Owen. Although we cook it up every year to try and make it seem like the race for 4th is interesting, it's not. If anybody wants to get in touch with us this morning, 0879 180 180. The headline on, which paper is it? It's the, must have been the London Times, was that the clock is ticking on Thomas Tuchel. I was like, wow.
Yeah. What is the headline?
Well,
give me.
Clock already ticking for Tuchel after limp opener. It's Henry Winter, and they've taken it from his first paragraph. When the ball flew out of play near Thomas Tuchel midway through the first half, Chelsea's latest head coach quickly seized a spare, throwing it to Ben Chilwell, trying to quicken the pace, maybe fearing that the clock is already ticking at Stamford Bridge. It usually is.
Yes, indeed. Tuchel, 1 game down in the Premier League, 1 training session down in the Premier League, so there is no better time to draw loads and loads and loads of conclusions from the Thomas Tuchel era at Chelsea. So I sat through all of this last night, and we're going to go through tactically how they approach the game in just a moment. But first of all, let's remind ourselves of where they're coming from. Let's remind ourselves of how they set up in the last Frank Lampard game. I've got average positions on screen here of how Chelsea set up that night. It was a bit of a mess of a 4-2-3-1. You had Mount and Kovacic into 2. You'd Pulisic at the top of your screen there, the most advanced player. Your fullback's very high under Frank Lampard. And somewhere in the middle of that image on screen is Kai Havertz looking very lost in the middle of that 3. They had 65% of possession that night against Leicester, Frank Lampard's last game in the Premier League, and they lost 2-0. So let's move on to last night then. Thomas Tuchel moved to a 3-4-3. He left Mount, James, Abraham, Pulisic on the bench and brought in Jorginho, Azpilicueta, Giroud and Ziyech. You can see here immediately that, yes, Chilwell and Reece James were very advanced fullbacks, but as wing-backs, Callum Hudson-Odoi and Ben Chilwell are even more advanced. On the far left there, you have Ben Chilwell well into the Wolves half in terms of his average position last night. And at the top right there, Callum Hudson-Odoi, the most advanced player on the pitch in general. He was pushed over to the left in the second half, which has probably skewed his average position a little bit. He was hugging the touchline quite a lot in that first half, and the standout performer for Chelsea. The big thing that people are focusing on, or one of the big things that people are focusing on, is the two midfielders that Tuchel is going to pick. After the game, Tuchel explained that he wanted to have three at the back with 2 6s in front of them to stop the Wolves' counter-attack. So the 2 6s he went for, and we've got them circled here, are Jorginho and Kovacic. With N'Golo Kante injured at the moment, you'd expect him to come in to be one of those 6s in the near future. But as a result of playing those two last night, and these two have taken a lot of flack over the years, is that they completed 820 passes, which is the highest of any team in the Premier League this season. That was their team total. Kovacic and Jorginho together completed almost 300 of them. So a lot of passing, not a lot of penetration, but it's not just on them. It is also on the two number 10s that he deployed last night, which is Ziyech and Havertz, circled in this image here. They didn't manage to turn that possession into an onslaught. They had 78.9% of possession, and they attempted just 14 shots with 5 of them on target. For those that are interested, their XG was 0.73. So Tuchel, after the game, talked about many ball recoveries. So he didn't care that their XG was crap. He's a man of stats, but he loved the fact that he had many ball recoveries. And in an interview with BN Sports after the game, he had the stat ready to hand. 16 recoveries in the last third. This is a data-driven man, but it also looked like Ziyech and Havertz off the ball looked a bit better. Still way off at where you'd expect from penetration. I was just doing a bit of a look back then on how surprising this is that Tuchel will go to 3 at the back last night. He does have form doing it. It's not his preferred formation. However, with Paris Saint-Germain in his first full season at the club, it was sort of his go-to formation at the back. For example, he played it in both of those legs against Manchester United, the game that they bottled in the Champions League in 2019. You can see here Dani Alves and Juan Bernat were his wing-backs at the time. His midfield too, take away Jorginho and take away Kovacic, you got Verratti and Marquinhos here, probably a better midfield too. Then you move on to the 2 10s who would play behind Mbappe. Di Maria, Draxler, Neymar were his options. Again, are these better options than he has at Chelsea? They actually might be, but what we don't see in the graphic there is, of course, Neymar, because he was in a hat crying on the sideline for that particular occasion. He stopped doing it then after that, which is interesting. He went to a back four for a year and a half, and then with his very last few games in charge, Thomas Tuchel, I guess, had a bit of a relapse. He went back to the 3 at the back. It was his dying sting on Ligue 1, was all of last December. He went to a 3-5-2. So it's not actually that much of a surprise. It's not actually that much of a throwback for Thomas Tuchel. It was his most recent formation. People have called him the German Antonio Conte last night. Maybe he is. Maybe he does bring the 3 at the back with wing backs back to Chelsea. Let's move on to how they finished then last night. So this is not their average positions from last night. This is what I think he was going for. I think he was going for a 4-2-3-1 for the last 15 minutes or so of the game last night. He brought on Mason Mount, he brought on Pulisic, and he brought on Tammy Abraham, with Ziyech, Chilwell and Giroud coming off. You can see there that you have Havertz on the left of that 3, Mount through the middle, although he was drifting right. And then on the right, you had Christian Pulisic. Now, this is something that people expected, and this is just to wrap up on this. This is something people expected going into the Tuchel era at Chelsea, that Pulisic would be pushed to the right-hand side because he loves playing him on the right at Borussia Dortmund. One of the first times he did this, and we'll take you back to April 15th, 2017, was when they beat Eintracht Frankfurt 3-1. You can see Christian Pulisic on the right of a 3 there. You look at that attack and you think to yourself, can he get a similar output from the Chelsea players over the next little while? So for radio listeners, the 3-1 up top was Pulisic, Kagawa and Marco Reus behind Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. It's a bloody good attack. It wasn't amazing. They didn't win the Bundesliga. They didn't really come close to winning the Bundesliga with that set of players, but they did play a hell of a lot of a 4-2-3-1 after that moment, and a lot of 4-3-3 as well. And the one constant was Christian Pulisic on the right. So I'd be excited if I was him. It looks like Tuchel is going to get the best out of him. The question is, Havertz and Werner and Giroud and Abraham and Mount, are these pieces of the jigsaw and Ziyech going to be able to fit together?
Yeah, at some point, I suspect they will, and I think maybe the clock isn't quite as ticking as the London Times would have us believe. That's Tuchel's tactics for you this morning. Good stuff, Eoin. If anybody wants to comment, or if you're a Chelsea fan, we'd love to hear how excited or otherwise you are. You know, there's the sadness that the club icon is gone, but all of a sudden you've got one of the hottest young managers in Europe. So we'll see. Phil Egan, good morning to you. How are you?
How you doing, lads? How you getting on?
What's going on?
Tactics, eh? Well, tactics went out the window last night for the game at Old Trafford, anyway.
You nearly gave us a blast of Big Mick, didn't you? It was on the tip of your tongue.
Tactics, yeah. Just walk in and just drop kick the tactics board and just throw it out the dressing room. That fighting spirit, a bit of fighting spirit actually in Mick's first game last night as Cardiff manager. They're 2-0 down, came back to draw 2-2. But yeah, obviously the big result was at Old Trafford. When you kind of looked at the teams before the game and they put up the graphic on the TV beforehand, and you could see Sheffield United didn't have a full bench. Phil Jagielka was playing. You feared for Sheffield United. You wondered how are they going to get and hurt United, but obviously the set piece changed things. But yeah, it's up there with the shocks of the season, and what a chance missed for Manchester United, a chance to go back to the top of the Premier League. They needed to win against a team that had one league win all season. That was against Newcastle, 1 point away from home all season. They've only scored 2 goals on more than one occasion, twice now this season, both against Manchester United. So Chris Wilder's side, second win of the season, that 2-1 win ends United's 13-game unbeaten run in the league. I have to go back as far as the Arsenal game at Old Trafford on the 1st of November for United's last league defeat. And obviously they play Arsenal this weekend. But Ollie Burke with the goal. Sheffield United are still 10 points from safety, and they're away to Manchester City at the weekend. It'll be interesting to see what Manchester City do against Sheffield United. You suspect that they'll have far more success and they'll be able to break them down. No, Solskjaer said after the game he thought the officials let them down in terms of the first goal, what Billy Sharp did, the build-up to that. Also, the goal that Martial had disallowed for what Harry Maguire did on Aaron Ramsdale. So Solskjaer wasn't happy. You mentioned Thomas Tuchel, obviously his first game in charge, a 0-0 draw with Wolves at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea 5 points off the Champions League places. 1-1 draw between Everton and Leicester. I was trying to keep an eye on this game as well between watching the game at Old Trafford, and every time I looked, Leicester were just constantly on the attack. But James Rodriguez's goal had given Everton something to hang on to, but Jordan Pickford couldn't hang on to Yuri Tielemans' shot in the second half, and I think Everton would have been happy with a draw. Saying that, Calvert-Lewin had a good chance to win it late on, and Burnley came from behind twice to beat Aston Villa. I don't know how Villa lost this game. They should have been well ahead by half-time. Ross Barkley hit the crossbar when it was 1-0, but 3-2 win for Burnley, obviously following up on that win over Liverpool last week. Chris Wood with the goal for Burnley to win it for them. 0-0 between Brighton and Fulham. More action tonight. The game's coming thick and fast. Obviously, you've got Tottenham and Liverpool at White Hart Lane tonight from 8 o'clock. I mentioned the championship there. Conor Heron scored on his league debut for Swansea, and they're up to second place. They drew 1-1 with Brentford. Mentioned Cardiff there, came from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 away to Barnsley. Still 23 points clear. Rangers are in the Scottish Premiership. They won 1-0 away to Hibs. Second place, Celtic picked up their first win in 5 matches. They beat Hamilton 2-0. Remember, Celtic do have 3 games in hand, but I think it's fairly safe to say that that league is done and dusted. Shane Lowry and Graham McDowell will tee off just after 8 o'clock on the opening day of the Dubai Desert Classic. And Porter Carrington's already out in the course. He's made a good start. He's 3 under after 11 holes, just 2 behind the leaders there. Paul Casey and Sergio Garcia, part of a group in the share of the lead on 5 under. Rory McIlroy is in action later on at the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines on the PGA Tour. And the Tayeste's Chase is the feature race at Gorham Park today. That's off at 3:25. First one there gets underway at 1:15.
All right, good stuff, Phil. Thanks very much for that. The race that stops at County, they call the Tayeste's in Gorham. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. 7:49 this morning. Let me tell you what's coming up on the show between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to talk to Daniel Harris about Manchester United. We'll do the newspaper headlines, some interesting stuff about the 2 potential options for the GAA Championship. We'll talk about that just after 8:05 this morning. Niamh Briggs is going to join us at 8:15 for our back 3 depth chart. And also how do we accommodate all the out-halves that we're producing at the moment in Irish rugby, certainly at underage level. If any of them are as good as we think they're going to be, then we're going to have a glut of them. John Duggan at 8:35 taking us through the rest of the sports news. We have Arthur Lanigan-O'Keeffe and Natalya Coyle in the latest episode of Up Close and Personal. We're marking your car for Cheltenham with 7 weeks to go, I think it is now, with Tom at 9:05. We've got your TV picks coming at 9:15, and then the weird and wonderful world of crossover between professional rugby and WWE. We'll talk to somebody who has successfully jumped from the pitch to whatever it is, the ring, in WWE. That's coming away at 9:40. Now, let's turn our attention to football, and Daniel Harris is with us. Daniel, what happened? What happened to Manchester United yesterday?
They all played badly at the same time, I guess, which happens. I think when we spoke last week, I said that having spent 2 decades and more watching title-winning teams, I feel like I've got a decent idea of what one looks like, and it doesn't quite look like what this team looks like yet. But they have a possibility of winning the title because no one else has really looked that way either. And I think particularly when Europe starts again, like it could be, we've no idea what's going to happen because there are so many games and everyone's exhausted already. But United, I've had a look and I think they haven't won a game by more than 1 goal in 11. So for everything to catch up with them was not something that was entirely surprising, even if it was surprising that it came in that particular game against that particular opponent. Yeah,
was there anything that they could have done? Was there a difference in team selection, or does this happen when a squad is in this evolutionary phase where they're not battle hardened yet? Then they're not a team of title winners collectively. They haven't been through this. They can't work their way through games like this.
You never quite know. I mean, I thought that Ole, the team that Ole picked was okay because it wasn't the first team, but there's been a lot of games. They've got to play Arsenal away at the weekend. I guess we'll come to that shortly. Arsenal are playing really well, so you need to rest some players. I felt that when things weren't working, he didn't make the right changes. I thought that I probably might have hooked Matic at half-time because I thought that they needed the speed to the game that either McTominay or Fred can bring, because Fred can run with the ball, looks to pass through the lines, looks to pass forward quickly, and McTominay also can carry the ball. And I thought that was a change he could have made early. And the other change is that he seems to be set in a rut of Greenwood gets taken off after about an hour all the time, however he's playing and however everyone else is playing. And he was looking a lot more likely to do something about the situation than Martial, who gave a phenomenally indolent performance, even by his phenomenal standards of phenomenal indolence.
He seems to be, I guess, garnering a lot of attention, a lot of negative attention this morning. Like the real dilemma is when to use Cavani's minutes, and I guess it's not going to be enough to mount a full title challenge this season, Daniel. And maybe that is the number one question that needs to be asked in the transfer window at the end of this season.
Maybe. I mean, I was surprised Cavani didn't start yesterday because I thought United would want to get the game won. I mean, if I was going to rest anyone actually yesterday, I'd probably have rested Pogba, who's done a lot of running recently and will be needed to do something good against Arsenal. Although, looking at the team that was picked, perhaps it will be Fred, McTominay and Bruno and not Pogba, I don't know. But the thing that you can't keep relying on Cavani, but he should be fit enough because he's not played that much. He's not played that much over the last kind of year or so, and he looks in incredible shape. So I think that there is a need for a better centre-forward than Martial, that's for sure. The question is whether you buy another centre-forward to go in front of Greenwood. If you can get Erling Haaland, then obviously you do that because he's going to be the best. But otherwise, you might be hoping that you get another year out of Cavani after this one, and at that point, Greenwood is ready. And if I was looking at places to strengthen, I think it would all depend on that if I could get Haaland, then I would make that a priority. But otherwise, United need a controlling midfield player, most of all, I think, more than anything, they need that. They need a centre-back more than they need another centre-forward probably as well. And they haven't had a right winger in years. And when you see games like the game last night, only being able to play from one side of the pitch most of the time is a problem. And I don't know. I mean, that was why they wanted to buy Jadon Sancho. Now they've bought Amad Diallo, and I don't know if he's meant to mean that there's no need for Sancho. Ole's hinted, not hinted, he said that he thinks he'll be ready for the squad soon. So perhaps that will be an end to Jadon Sancho, and he thinks he's now found the solution to that position. I don't know, but you see it in certain games when United don't have enough on the right-hand side. And in general this season, pretty much every home game has been a fight. They won at Leipzig. They played really well in that game. They played really well against Villa, and they played really well against Leeds. But I'm not sure that they've won a home game by more than 1 goal apart from those. And even Villa, they only won by 1 goal and was a struggle in the end. But the football they played was good.
So if it's not a title-winning team, where are they? What's the truth? And how much progress have they made this season from last season?
They've made loads of progress. I didn't say they couldn't win the title. I think if City burn everyone off and go on a run where they win another 10 games from here in a row, then United aren't good enough to match that yet. But City's games, like City got Burnley at the weekend, and Burnley are in good form, and then their games start to get difficult. They got Liverpool the game after that, and the price that they paid for the run that they've had now, basically hauling themselves back into the title race and putting them at the front, is that they've now got some difficult games, and they've got Europe starting again. They've got to play 2 legs against Gladbach, and then who knows what's going to happen after that. So I wouldn't say United don't look like a title-winning team. They're not as good as title-winning teams I've seen before, but that isn't necessarily a bar to winning the title. So in terms of where United were, like, they've made good progress from last season. They finished last season with 10 wins and 4 draws, I think, something like that. And you could see that they were improving. Then they didn't have a pre-season. They had a lot of players that played through the summer, so it took them time to get going. But once they did get going, they've produced another run of similar quality. But they need to find a way of making games easy for them, because it doesn't always work like this, as we saw with Liverpool last season. But in the main, if you find yourself getting stuck in tight game after tight game after tight game, eventually you stop winning them. And we saw it with Liverpool in 08-09. We saw it with Arsenal in 06-07 and 07-08, I think, where they kept winning games by 1 goal. They kept having to come from behind. And eventually, football is a chaotic game. So eventually, it's not simply about who's the better team. If you look at most sports, I would say of all the teams, you obviously have in any contest, you expect the better team to win, but there are certain contests that give more chances to the second favourite than other sports. And I think that football is one of those sports where you see more surprises than, say, in rugby, that was quite a physical game. And those things are finite. Whereas in football, goals are rare, and it's a very chaotic, quick game, which gives the opportunity for teams who are second favourites to win more often than you'd expect. So if you keep getting caught in tight games against teams that have players that can hurt you, and if you yourselves are profligate in attack and not always solid at the back, then don't be surprised when you see games like the game you saw last night, which isn't to say United shouldn't have done better. Of course they should have done better. And the fact they lost to Sheffield United wasn't simply the chaotic randomness of football. But it was very 80s United, where beat Liverpool 1 week and lose to the team at the bottom the next week. And that is a sign of a team that isn't there yet, but has good players and is quite a good team. But the question for Ole will be, what does he do to take the next step? And part of it is what Wenger used to describe as internal solutions. It's the players that you've got improving, and we're seeing the players that he's got improving. But they do still need a couple of additions to be a team that you would say, I think this team are going to win the league, not given a fair win and given some damage befalling other clubs, then this team could win the league, which is where I think they are now. Yeah,
I think you're talking about pre-season. We look at all the squads and go, yeah, that's a title-winning squad. They're not quite at that point yet. They probably need a few more players. And one other thing it seems that they might need is more Bruno Fernandes characters in each line of the team. Like, the defending for the second goal last night was kind of... It was so bizarre. It looked like everybody knew what was going to happen, and they were essentially, like, passing the ball almost into their own net. In a weird... It was robotic, but in slow motion, and like they were all wading through treacle. Not the type of defence or the aggression that we would expect from a team who has been on the front foot recently and who has a little bit of confidence.
Their defending's been a lot better recently. I think that I'm going to offer some slight mitigation before I wade into them, and that is that playing a lot of games one after the other, and you've got Maguire, particularly De Gea has played almost all of them. Wan-Bissaka's played almost all of them. Tellers, on the other hand, has hardly played at all, and Tuanzebe has hardly played at all. And when you play a lot of games one after the other, and especially when they're tight games, then physically and mentally, that is a toll. Which isn't to excuse the defending that we saw that was hilarious and appalling. But that's the thing with this team. They have defended better recently, but they're not solid enough at the back. And to fight your way back into a game without really having earned it, like you get a goal from a set play at a point when you're not looking particularly dangerous at a time when you would expect to be looking extremely dangerous in the game, is a massive boon. So to then go and make the mess of it that they did is a tremendous oversight. And I mean, we hadn't seen defending like that in quite some time since the Bashak Shahir game, and sounds like that was when we weren't in lockdown. So that was about 3 decades ago, I think. But so it's been a while since they defended quite as badly as that. But I mean, you shouldn't. Yeah, no, I don't think anyone was silly enough to think that this kind of behaviour wasn't in their locker. And the thing ultimately with Solskjaer, and I've been saying it a lot, is that there are players who we know are going to keep letting him down. And De Gea has been good recently, but for him to flap at a set play like he did for the first one, I mean, I think it was a foul. I think the Maguire one probably wasn't a foul, but I see both sides of those. So, and to be on the wrong side of both of those calls is unfortunate, but you need to play well enough to take those calls out of the equation. And De Gea had a bad game last night. And someone on Twitter posted a clip of the second goal and his clearance in the midst of that second goal.
Oh.
So something like when you force an emo to play football. And it was exactly that. We've all seen it at school, like the kids that don't like playing, that don't want to play, and you're like, I'm afraid you've got to play here. And you see that. And this defence have a tremendous line in consecutive errors where they concede goals and you think, well, whose fault was that? And then you need to start writing down the names because there are so many of them. It's like I went to market and it was De Gea and it was Maguire and it was Lindelof and it was Wan-Bissaka and it was Telles and it was Martial and that was what we saw. And it's happening a lot less, but you can improve players, and players can make themselves better, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to change their characters. And De Gea has been better, but yeah, I mean, he had a terrible night yesterday, and I mean, who knows how different it would have been with Dean Henderson, but I said this weeks and weeks and weeks ago that at least with Dean Henderson, we don't know. Whereas with De Gea, we do know, and United now have a really difficult game at the weekend against Arsenal, who I think are playing well, who are playing with confidence now, and I also think they're quite a bad style matchup for United because they're pressed from the front. United have got better at handling that recently. Yeah. But it's still difficult.
Let me just ask you about, because I'm almost out of time. I've got like 2 minutes left here. So I specifically want to ask about De Gea and Pogba, 2 assets that Manchester United had on their books that everybody thought, the contract in particular for De Gea was too onerous. There's no way they'd be able to get any money back for him. And with Pogba, he looked so disaffected that the value had depressed. That was, I don't know, at the start of the season. Now all of a sudden, both of them, notwithstanding what happened last night with De Gea, have re-established their value, and yet they don't feel like central pillars around which you're going to build a team that competes season in, season out. Should they cash in on both of those this summer and use that money to reinvest in a bunch of players?
I don't think you get very much money for De Gea, and the money you get for Pogba in this market with 1 year left will probably allow you to buy a replacement if you think that Van der Beek isn't the guy. Where you find a player as good as Paul Pogba is obviously, that's a problem, but that's hard to do. But if Pogba wants to leave, then United should let him go. He didn't play well last night, but he has been really good recently.
If he wants to stay, would you keep him though, Daniel? That's the question. If he wants to stay,
if it was up to me, would I keep him? No, I'd sell him and I'd try and find a better replacement.
So I think
we'll always be having these conversations about Pogba while he's playing at the moment.
Well, that's the thing. We had it, I'd say, 2 months ago, and everybody at that stage was like, the Man United fans would drive him to the airport, particularly after his agent before the European game. However, the form has been good, and it's got to the point where you can see Paris Saint-Germain deciding, yeah, we'll have a little bit of that. Like, why not put him? We've got 1 more season left with Kylian Mbappe. Let's put them together. And there's suddenly a buyer, and it makes sense. You can see how in the summer it makes sense. But Pogba might say he wants to stay. And if I'm Manchester United, I'm like, yeah, great, you want to stay, sell him, take the money and run.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that with Paul Pogba over years. Like, he's produced a decent, consistent run of form, but he's not going to change who he is. And I don't think that what United need from him and what he is able to deliver exactly match. Whereas going to PSG, I feel like might be a better match for him. But United would be in a problem without having had Pogba these last few weeks. I think that is fair to say. But I think that we're probably going to always be having the same conversations about Paul Pogba for as long as he stays at United, and that's not good enough.
No, fair enough. Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, see you again.
Daniel Harris giving us some immediate reaction to Manchester United's defeat last night. We'd love to hear from you. Plenty of comments coming in by WhatsApp 0879 180 180. Eoin says there's a massive overreaction when Manchester United lose games, but don't you think there's a massive overreaction when they win a few games? I think, Tony, we just wanted a title race. Is that right, Eoin?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. We definitely got blinded by the prospect of a title race because, like last season, the way Liverpool ran away from it, and the way there was a big old pandemic in the middle of it to just elongate that season where Liverpool ran away with it. We're thirsty for something competitive. That's all we want, and this just has all the hallmarks of something that might lose its competitive edge very quickly because we just know how good Manchester City are. And we also kind of know how good Manchester United are in certain positions and how good some of those players have been this season, that I'm not sure, were we totally getting carried away saying that they could last the trip.
Let's wait
season.
and see. If they beat Arsenal at the weekend, they're back in it. But I'm not throwing them out just yet. Michael on YouTube says, not United's first team. Only 3 players last night weren't regular starters. Yeah, but Matic was playing. And as Wayne Ryan says in response to that, once Matic starts, it all slows down. It's not your first team if Matic is playing. Kira Donnelly says fitness and rotation is the key now in the title race. Isn't Martial the new Henry, asks Neil. I believe that's called shitposting by the kids these days. Kevin Kane on WhatsApp says, lads, very frustrating result. De Gea's finished at United. Maguire's defending was brutal. Telles and Matic too slow. Wan-Bissaka is awful. Bruno's been poor the last 3-4 games. Rashford, Martial and Greenwood were awful, but their attitudes were the worst I ever saw. Title gone. Need Haaland or Kane in the summer. There's nothing like a massive overreaction. They're all a bunch of chumps. Come on, Kevin. Fair play to you.
The Matic thing is interesting. So he's played, I think, 12 of their Premier League games so far this season. That number really can't afford to get that high if you want to challenge for a Premier League title. Like, just looking at Liverpool's squad last year, in and around that same number was Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who ended up starting 17 games come the end of the season for Liverpool. What he gives in terms of the dynamic running and stuff compared to Matic is a hell of a difference. And it's those sort of players, the players who you're going to get 15 to 20 games out of per season, that quality probably needs to up.
That's the title-winning squad right there. That's an excellent illustration of that as well. And good job on the tactics research, Eoin, says Anthony Ryan on YouTube this morning. Indeed, if you missed that, it's up on our social channels. Subscribe to offtheball.com. YouTube.com/offtheball, and follow us up on everything else as well. We've got our Cheltenham countdown and our TV picks after 9 o'clock. Later this hour, we're going to bring you the latest episode of Gillette's Up Close and Personal, and we're back after these assessing Irish Rugby's back 3 depth chart with Niamh Briggs.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Need to get on top of the day's sports news? Well, the OTB Brief is the only sports update you'll need every morning.
We did not abuse any privilege. We did the right things. We were absolutely, totally professional. We had a little drink in the afternoon on a day off. Completely allowed. No law breaking. Yet no, we come back with this barrage of absolute hypocrisy.
The OTB Brief, weekday mornings from 7:20 a.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, study the form with our Racing Post Spotlight before watching the action with free live streaming on all UK and Irish horse races. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
OK, let's run you through what's in the sports pages this morning on otbsports.com, the front page of the website. Ronan O'Gara, how Joey Carberry can help Johnny Sexton's career. That's a very interesting point, essentially saying that Sexton could finish his career as a finisher coming off the bench in all the big games that Ireland are going to have if if Joey Carberry gets back. Can you stick that one back up for me again? I'll run through all the rest of the stuff that's on it there. So, Manchester United's reaction to that last night. Billy Walsh, ridiculous that Irish fighters need to go abroad to earn a living. Brilliant interview with Billy last night as part of our continuing hashtag OTB Future. It's the future of sport in Ireland. The Queen Mother Champion Chase is Tom's review. And Tuchel says he made his mark on Chelsea in just one session. So that's not what the English media think, Thomas. Wind your neck in there, I believe, is the response from them.
But I think actually the English media believe exactly that. That's the problem. Don't tell them that your fingerprints are all over the team because you weren't very good last night. And the English media are giving you all the blame.
They had a record-breaking number of passes on, I'll have you know. And we all know that's what counts.
They all have lovely passes.
Well, look, there was a mad reaction to the stats coming through about that. It's like, it is a good sign that the team can suddenly take on some instruction. It's going to take them a bit more time to become particularly adept. All of the players were out of form so badly that they sacked a club icon, like slightly or somewhat prematurely. So obviously things weren't going great for them. The Examiner this morning, Mourinho wouldn't get away with behaving like Klopp. They hate each other. The beef is real between Mourinho and Klopp, and it's good to watch because tonight Spurs against Liverpool at 8 o'clock, and then the rest of that. Tony Martin's a good column on Abramovich, now part of the fabric of English football. The great oligarch survivor, he's called, which is a typically brilliant piece of writing from Tommy. Klopp claims Lampard has left a present for Tuchel, and it's a good one. It's not like one of those presents that kids leave, on doorsteps. Burke's deflected winner rocks Solskjaer's title challengers, and Tuchel's reign starts with lacklustre draw. The Guardian a bit fairer on that. The Telegraph is saying Tuchel says he's already out of the title race, which, I suppose is one of those things that we had assumed he wasn't going to be allowed to say, that he was supposed to get them in the title race. Most of the headlines are match reports from last night. Tuchel's big night falls flat. That's the back page headline of the London Times. There's a story here that I want to talk about in the Irish Independent. So there's Andy Farrell and Johnny Sexton did a press conference yesterday. You'll hear some of those, and I'm sure you heard some of the clips last night on Off the Ball and News Talk too. New structure could revolutionise football, insists Collins. So a radical blueprint to transform the race for Sam Maguire has been hailed as the potential saviour of intercounty football. This is one of those long rumbling stories that before COVID it looked like we were going to be stuck with a variation of the current championship as it stands. So you would have 4 provinces, except they would move counties from one province to another. How do you pick? I don't know, maybe pick Dublin and move them to Munster and see what the Munster Championship is like every year. Maybe that's an idea we could all got behind. But that wasn't what they were going to do. They were going to pick the worst counties and shove them into the less performing championship. So essentially it's no different from what we had. And that seemed to be the idea that was gaining the most currency. Now that idea hasn't gone. Just let me point out, that idea is still on the table. But the other idea is to take the provincial championships, play them at the start of the season, and they're competitions in and of their own rights. So that's a knockout football. Maybe you could play it under lights, I don't know. It sounds like a type of thing that we could all get behind. And then there's a trophy at the end of that. And then the league starts in summertime. And then the league is the Sam Maguire competition, and it's also the Tailteann Cup competition. So presumably Divisions 3 and 4 play for the Tailteann Cup, and those matches are played at the same time as the All-Ireland Series. Divisions 1 and 2 play for Sam Maguire, or however they work it out. Whatever that combination is. Maybe everybody plays for Sam Maguire, and if you win Division 4, you get into a preliminary round before the quarterfinals or something. I'm sure there's some way of making it work. But that's the plan. Summer football, league, Dublin out of Croke Park. This is the greatest idea that they've ever had, that we've all been talking about for about 20 years. Let's do
it. Colin Collins is quoted in the piece saying he'd give his right hand for the proposal, which is always a good sign when somebody's willing to go that far for a championship structure piece of commitment. Who wins from this is the question, and a lot of people probably win. And I guess one of the people who benefit from this a little bit as well might be the team that everybody's talking about in terms of splitting, and a new shiny championship structure would help allay fears of that happening to Dublin.
How? Tell us, what would happen?
Well, first of all, you would have improved competitiveness around the country. The Leinster Championship and the batterings that come to Meath, the Kildare, and everybody in Leinster really wouldn't be as frequent. There would still be batterings, no doubt, because Dublin happen to be very good at football. But the ridiculousness of the Leinster Championship would suddenly be taken out of view. Like, as the main part of the championship, this stuck out like a sore thumb. All these hammerings that Dublin would mete out every single year. The less that can be in the shop window, or the less they can happen full stop, the better for the GAA, and the better for those who will be clinging on to all parts of Dublin with their fingernails at this point. And you know what? Maybe that will ultimately end in a more competitive championship, and everybody is a winner. And I don't know. Maybe the rising tide will lift a few more boats, and maybe the gap will close. But certainly, it would divert eyes away from what seems to be the problem at the moment, or what is certainly being spoken about as a problem, which is Dublin. You're the problem, Dublin. All of a sudden, it's like we found a solution to something that's not you, but it might actually help out the problem that you have become.
3 or 4 times a year, Dublin would be playing in Clonus, they'd be playing in Killarney, they'd be playing in Castlebar. They will be playing out of Croke Park in championship matches, essentially. They're league matches, but at the end of that league, that will dictate what happens in the championship. And what they should do is fix the quarterfinals somehow where they're not in Croke Park. So maybe put them in the Gaelic grounds, maybe decide that every year they're going to be there. It's going to be a festival of football. So it's your semi-final and final. And Dublin still have their home league games in summer in Croke Park. There's loads of ways to make this an absolute winner, right?
The one thing I would 100% is yes is the answer to that question. But the one thing I would say to kind of contradict myself here is that Dublin are so good that they have the power to completely disassemble even good championship structures. Personally, I know I'm kind of out on an island in this one. I don't think the Super 8s was that a bad idea. I actually think the Super 8s would have been good and people would have been speaking about them in a much different way if Dublin didn't exist. The reason why we had such negativity around the Super 8s is because there were dead rubbers, and the reason why we had dead rubbers is because there was one team in one of the groups who was always going to be top of the group come that last game in the round, and that team happened to be Dublin. So Dublin are so good that they managed to completely dismantle competitiveness in any competition, most competitions that they play in, and there's no fix for that structures-wise.
No. Look, we all know where it's going, but if you're the Dubs, you want to make this happen because it at least buys you some time to quell the notion that the only solution, the single solution, is the breakup of Dublin into 2 or more parts. There is at least 3 years where you look at this structure and see what happens, and they would, you would assume, lose some games over the course of that. But they'd be better games. Full provincial grounds, watching matches in summer with the best teams, and teams of in every county you're going to get games in summer of your team against a team of similar standard, and at the end of it there's a chance of some silverware. It's the perfect scenario for us to at least try for a couple of years and see what happens.
Yeah, it would be brilliant. And maybe the Dubs just want to wait it out. Wait until James McCarthy and Brian Fenton and Cluxton. Well, Cluxton's never going to retire, but maybe the other two, wait for them to retire. And then all of a sudden the talk goes away as well.
All right, let's move on because the Six Nations is nearly upon us. The media day was yesterday. We've seen some comments from Johnny Sexton and also from Andy Farrell too, talking about what his hope for the tournament is, just to still be in it with a chance of winning it at the end, because England at home is our last game. So plenty of excitement around that, and we've been doing our depth charts. The team has looked relatively predictable up to this point. Niamh Briggs joins us this morning to do the back three. Niamh, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, how are you?
The Ireland team has unfortunately picked itself a lot in recent years. Does the back three, when you were thinking about it, was it relatively straightforward?
Yeah, it was. I think probably more concerning was when you're trying to go down to the 1 to 4. So as you were getting towards the end, it wasn't as clear cut. But yeah, definitely for starters and very near backups, it was pretty much an easy enough task, I thought. Okay, well look, we'll get into the depth of the depth chart in a moment. But who are starting on the two wings, and who's your starting fullback? My starting fullback would be Hugo Keenan. I think he's had an unbelievable start for Leinster this year. And yeah, I think he's probably the best fit for that position. And I know they've tried Jacob Stockdale and Jordan Larmour there. I'm not sure about that. And on my wings, I would probably go Keith Earls and Jordan Larmour. Now, I know in my depth chart in the right wing, I had Andrew Conway second, but I think a lot depended on the opposition. If it's ball in hand and on the ground and the game is going to be tight, or on the ground, as I say, then you're looking at Jordan Larmour. But if it's going to be something in the air and a more defensive type of game, you're probably looking at Andrew Conway. But I go Jordan Larmour on the right wing. Okay, well, look, we'll get into the wing selections. Let's go in depth on the full-back. So Hugo Keenan is number one at this stage. It's been great that Hugo Keenan has been able to kind of not come from nowhere, but to nail that place down so quickly. He's number one. Shane Daly at Munster is number two. Joey Carberry is number 3 in your depth chart, and Michael Lowry from Ulster is 4. It's interesting that you don't have Stockdale and you don't have Jordan Larmour in your fullback depth chart. You're not convinced by them? No, I'm not. I think a big thing about being a fullback is almost like a second 10 in terms of your ability to be able to predict what's going to happen a phase or two down the line. I think Rob Kearney was unbelievable at that, so that your position sense, you're almost not chasing the game. You're there where you need to be. And for me, I'm just not sure Jordan Larmour or Jacob Stockdale have that. I think they're both incredibly accomplished wingers, but I think for a fullback, for that peace of mind, You've got to be in the right position at all the time, and your ability to work off the ball has to be one of the highest in the team. And yeah, I think Hugo Keenan does that. I think he does it unbelievably well. I think Shane Daly, I'd love to see him play more there. I think he has the athletic ability to be very potent there, but I'm not sure that'll, I would just love to see him there personally. The whole Joey Carberry thing, when I was showing it to the girls last night, they were like, Joey Carberry, I think if he's not going to be 10, it's still going to be Johnny, and he's back fit, you've got to have him on the pitch, and his ability to play another playmaker will offer another dynamic to that Irish attack, which hasn't been free-flowing and as fluid as we want, I think. And I think Michael Lowry's been playing brilliant for Ulster. I think he's a 10/15, so he's able to be, in terms of his ability off the ball, he's able to see where the ball is going to be. He's able to predict a phase or two ahead, and his footwork is unbelievable, and he's great in the air. So yeah, no, it's not a slight on Jacob Stockdale or Jordan Larmour. I just think that the four guys are probably better suited to a fullback role.
Go on, Eoin.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the specific attributes that are required to make a good 15 there. Can you learn that, Niamh? Is this more natural, I guess, awareness that maybe only comes as a result of getting a lot of minutes of 10 that allows that transition to happen? Like, what is that down to, actually knowing a phase or two ahead of the game, what's actually going to happen?
You definitely can learn it. I think you can learn any skill or any facet of the game. I just think at international level, it's not the place to learn it. And I think Ulster tried Stockdale at fullback for a couple of games, and they went back to Michael Lowry. And similar with Jordan Larmour, I think. And for example, Robbie Henshaw, that when Joe Schmidt era, they tried him back there. You just got. It's a difficult skill to learn, but it's about you're almost trying to, it's like a game of chess. You're almost trying to gauge or, show the opposition 10 or fullback space and then take it away at the last second. And so, yeah, I think we probably never really appreciated Rob Kearney for the work that he did off the ball as much as we do now, to be honest.
It's funny how Rob Kearney's reputation is getting even better as the time goes on. Like, if you look at how Munster really targeted Larmour even in the first 15-20 minutes of the game at the weekend, they were like, look, we know coming back from injury under the high ball you're uncomfortable, so the first, I think it was 3 knock-ons in the first 10 minutes. You can't do that at international level if you're going to be a fullback. You need to be 100%, and that's why Keenan very quickly went from not in the squad to first choice and kind of undroppable at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think his time at the sevens as well was, stood to him hugely. I think your ability to try and mark the space in sevens, your footwork has to be good, and your ability to be able to move the ball. I think you're 100% right about Larmour, and it's not just the last game. I think there's been question marks about his ability to contest high balls in the air under pressure, and any good team and at an international level, every team is good and will sniff out a weakness like Munster did last weekend, and they'll exploit it. And, unfortunately, at this level, you can't really have any big weaknesses. You can have facets of the game that you need to improve of, sure, but you can't have big weaknesses because teams will they're too clever. The likes of England, imagine Ford, Farrell, Ben Youngs, and they'll just pick holes in that all day, and you can't have that.
The Joey Carberry fullback idea, like, it looks like Sexton is going to stick around at least. He's talking about a new contract that would take him to next year, and then we're a year out from the World Cup, and nobody at Leinster has come close to being first choice while Sexton is still there, and as a result, the competition at Ireland hasn't quite been there yet. Maybe if Joey Carberry comes and plays a whole season for Munster at 10 and is absolutely outstanding, then fair enough. But you get the sense maybe Munster might look at him in a different position as well. They might play him. It's hard to know because they obviously have some very good quality young players coming up. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with all those contracts over the next while. But is there a possibility that whatever happens, we probably need Sexton and Carberry in the team, however it happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I don't think Johnny's going anywhere anytime soon, as much as people like to try and they seem to be pushing him out the door. I think he's still probably the general of that back line. I think he makes things thick, and but for sure, it'll be a big ask for Joey Carberry to come back in and play week in, week out after such a long layoff. So you've got to try and ease him into the game, and if that's in minutes at 10 and minutes at fullback, I think both Munster and Ireland will benefit hugely from it. Look, we know how good he is in terms of ball in hand, and we know how much he can just go from 0 to 60 and his ability to step defenders. So maybe, look, fullback might be an opportunity to get him as many minutes as he'll need once he comes back into it. But I think we just have to urge patience at the moment for him. All
right. Left wing, we have Keith Earls, Jacob Stockdale, James Lowe, and you put Hugo Keenan there, I presume, if somebody else is playing in fullback. Keith Earls also just undroppable at the moment, and kind of over the last decade or so, there's been no sign of any drop-off in terms of his defensive game or his attacking game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, he has to start on the left wing. I think that's his best position. I think it frustrates me a little bit how Ireland don't seem to use him or any of the wingers too much. And I think that's probably down to maybe a lack of an attacking fluidity in their game plan, maybe. But he's absolutely undroppable. I think he's experienced in terms of his ability to control that back three, his help in that 13 channel. Like, anybody will tell you that's played rugby at a high level, 13 is one of the most difficult positions to play because the space that you're trying to defend and attack in is so vast. When you have a winger that's so good and so confident beside you, it almost gives you that little bit of relief to be able to go and force issues and try and make things happen. So yeah, look, he's unbelievable, his footwork, and he hasn't lost any speed. And I think that's just, Ireland need to try and incorporate him and the winger, the other side, as much as possible, I think. Yeah,
so Keith Earls is 33 at this stage. You kind of feel like he probably will, fitness assuming, still be thereabouts when it comes to the next World Cup squad. Where do you stand on the whole, we're 28 games out from the World Cup, you're either going to be part of the World Cup squad or you're not. Is it more important to win now and breed a winning culture, or is it more important to play the long game?
I think for Andy Farrell and, that coaching setup that's come in, it's been such a difficult first year in terms of stop-start and pandemic and everything that's happened after it. And then, they're trying to watch players, and they've just had games postponed and club games not taking place. So it's hard to get any kind of fluidity. So I think for the next 8 or 10 weeks, they've got to try and find a game plan and a niche that suits them, and then really go for it, and then use this block to win, to breed confidence, breed winning culture, and then maybe look forward after that. Okay, so now it's win, no matter what happens, so that whatever you're doing after that, it's done with the background of a bit of comfort and a bit of sense of, we do know what we're doing, don't worry, we've got this. Yeah, kind of. I think you want to see things progress. I think you want to see game plans progress in terms of, I thought they defended quite well at times over the Autumn Nations Cup, but you still think that they're missing a small link in that attack. And whether it's a player like a Tyke Byrne or, an Ian Henderson or somebody like that can come in, that can be that playmaker to link both. You just felt like a small bit, it's a little bit static and a little bit stop-start, and I'm not sure that Ireland play their West Rugby that way. Yeah, we haven't got results playing that way anyway. So if Keith Earls is starting on the left wing for you, who starts on the right wing and what's on the other side? Yeah, I think, as I said earlier on, it's probably a lot to do with the opposition. For me, if you're looking to play ball on the ground and you're looking to exploit space as quickly as possible, then it's got to be Jordan Larmour. I think, he's electric over on the ground, and his ability to step people is like outrageous. And I'd love just to sit back and watch a highlight reel of him, because I think he's so far ahead in terms of ability to make things happen in small space, almost like a Cheslin Colby type of a player. If you can get him ball in space or get him ball with a soft shoulder, he can make things happen. There is a worry, obviously, defensively and in the air. And if you're looking for safe, then you probably go with Andrew Conway. I think while he's not as explosive on the ground as Jordan Larmour, I think his ability to be safe in the air, his he's an unbelievable high ball catcher. His defensive work is excellent. So yeah, I think it could be down to a lot of who you're playing against.
Who are those teams, Niamh? Like, for example, for Wales, if we use that as the example, who are you going for that game?
I would go Conway. I think Conway, Wales kick a lot. I think they'll exploit a lot. I think it's the likes of maybe, France don't kick a huge amount in terms of from their 10 or fullback. I think Scotland, Italy, they're the type of games that Jordan Larmour could potentially feature really well. I think that Conway, if you're going to be playing a game, a tactical game, a game against the likes of an England or a Wales who are just going to kick balls all day, their percentage of kicking is really, really high, then you've got to make sure that you're safe at the back, and then you can try and create options after it or moments in the game. So yeah, maybe probably go with Andrew Conway for that game.
It feels like Jacob Stockdale is the odd man out here then. Is there a scenario that you see, is there an opposition that you see in the Six Nations where you think to yourself, yes, he could start in the back three?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think he's like, there's no doubting he's had an unbelievable run in terms of his ability to score tries. We don't have many players like that, so it's not as if I'm just casting him to the side. I think you've got to look at a balance of a back line in terms of back three. They've got to be able to work together. They have to be able to cover ground together, and that's going to be really important. And yeah, absolutely, he's as physical as they come, I think, and his ability to create tries out of nothing a couple of years ago was something that we as rugby supporters were absolutely clamouring for. And I think he's had a couple of blips in between that maybe we're all now starting to think, like a bit like the Jordan Larmour thing with a high ball. He's had a few games where he's been put under pressure. That starts to change your thinking. Going forward, Jacob Stockdale is probably as good as any winger that we have. It's just the other facets of his game.
Yeah, so what do you do in that instance? Like, how do you, as a coach and as a management team, again, they're thinking short-term victory, but obviously we want to build a team for the World Cup. You expect if Ireland are going to compete to reach a semi-final or win a World Cup, we're going to need, like, Stockdale, fully formed, absolutely ready to go, 100%, and he's just not there at the moment. So do you take him out of the firing line? I mean, obviously he's injured and he's going to come back in the middle of this tournament. So not with caveating all that, like, is it just or do you give everybody a bit of game time here and just keep them all trying to slit each other's throats as you go along?
No, absolutely. I'd have him back in and amongst it, and then it's how it's how quickly he gets up to the pitch of things. They're obviously going to be over these few weeks progressing what they've done over the Autumn Nations Cup and those last two Six Nations games. So he's going to have to try and get to the pitch of that. And if he gets to that quickly, then absolutely I'll have him in and have them all vying for each other's blood. I think there's, the big thing that you said to me at the start of this was that the team basically picks itself. And at international level, that should never really be the way. I think it has to be a case of players, clamouring to try and get starting jerseys, and then big debates about who starts. And then when teams are named, almost people going, how is this person not starting? How is that person not starting? And at the moment, we haven't really had that across the board. But I think that the potential in all these players that we've named are huge, and they all have potential to be world class. So I would absolutely keep them all in tick, 100%.
Yeah, it's a difficult job to do for the coaching ticket. But if they decide their first team is the game is picked for the team against Wales, is picked for the game against Wales, and then they don't change it, that'd be really unbelievably frustrating for anybody who's not in it, and you would feel like you're butting your head against a brick wall. Whereas actually, I mean, I know a lot of coaches want everything sure and everything certain and things locked down because it gives you a guarantee of where you're going. But actually, we have proper depth here. Any combination of any of those players. If Conway played at fullback and Keenan played on the wing one of these games, that'd be an interesting little experiment too, because I really think Conway's an excellent fullback and hasn't really been given his head there.
Yeah, absolutely. For a long time, I thought he was Munster's best fullback and he was playing on the wing. And then, the more that they're not out of that position, the more it kind of slides to the back of your mind. So I 100% agree with you. But yeah, absolutely. I think the majority of these players can mix and match. I think It's not a case of that they're all nailed down at all. Probably bar Keith Earls, I think, and that's because he is the glue that sticks that back three together. But other than that, there's definitely huge scope for players to come in and out, all dependent on opposition, and then play to their strengths and weaknesses. Like, I don't know if you watched the South African documentary after they won the World Cup, but you know, they had this thing going that their players knew that they might only get a small amount of game time, and if they got that, that was fine. They'd make their time worth it. And Ireland have to have that kind of similar trait or a culture that, you know, I'm in for today, I might not necessarily be in for next week. But if that's the case, I'm going to make it, you know, the best 80 minutes that I can, so that I'm still fresh in everybody's minds, irrelevant of whether I start next week.
Yeah. Look, I think that's a really interesting conversation to have, because Ronan O'Gara really very kind of left field, saying that actually the best thing for the last few years of Johnny Sexton's career might be if Joey Carbery emerges as our best 10, because then Sexton is our number 2 out half and he can come off the bench and finish games. And geez, what a brilliant scenario that would be. And I'm thinking, I mean, but you wouldn't have liked that really, because he obviously wanted to start, but times have moved on and changed, and it'd be interesting to hear what Sexton has to say, and we have him on the show tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to asking him about it. I have to work out exactly how I phrase it. Listen, O'Gara says this, I think it's you. What do you think? But like,
I listened to that interview. I thought it was a really smart piece of analysis from O'Gara. I think
you were 10 and a 15. If someone said to you, look, your career is going to be expanded and extended by a couple of years, but you'll be coming off the bench, would you have been, how unhappy would you have been?
I think that if I had been younger and, you know, midway through my career, I probably wouldn't have been too happy. But as I got older and realised that, you know, there was probably as good, better players than I was, and also the ability to probably churn out 80 minutes, you know, I hated being taken off. But if I felt at that stage that I could have added maybe 20, 25 minutes every game and could be the person that could make a difference and close out games, well, 100% I would have taken it, and I would have grabbed it with both hands. And that's been purely honest from my perspective. And don't get me wrong, I you know, there'd have probably been days where I would have been like, oh, I played really well for that 20 minutes. I hope I get a start next week, knowing probably full well I wouldn't. And that would have been frustrating. But yeah, if it was going to extend my international career, I definitely would have, yeah.
It will be interesting to see what happens. That depth that we have of the number 10s at the moment, particularly in Munster, you know, again, O'Gara was fishing in the Munster pool and trying to convince Crowley to come over to La Rochelle. It obviously didn't happen, but there is now a bit of a logjam. If, and fingers crossed, Carbery comes back fit, suddenly there's 4 out halves at Munster, all of whom we would like to see playing for a regular period of time at 10, just to see where are they at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of them of that 4, aren't they, that are up in contract this summer. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Like, you know, Munster are in a really strange predicament. I think I read yesterday that 24 players that are in the senior squad that are out of contract this summer, and surely, you know, given the financial predicament and what's going on, they probably can't keep them all. So I'd imagine as the next few months go and Joey's injury, you know, keeps going the way it seems to be going now in terms of he's back on the pitch and he's back getting training minutes, possibly one could lose out there. And but for sure, I think Jack Crowley, Ben Healy, you know, they're so exciting. And as you know, as a supporter, you want to see them get as much game time. But you know, it's really difficult to sit back and watch people come down on JJ Hanrahan, because I thought he's done incredibly well for the majority of all the games that he's played over the last season, and basically probably been the only 10 that's there because Joey's been injured, and Ben Healy was kind of on that cusp of, you know, jumping from academy to development into that squad. So yeah, look, it's why they get paid the big bucks, and I certainly wouldn't want to be choosing to keep 10s and what 10s are going to be available to you, because if Joey comes back fit, you know, he clearly has to start. That's what they've signed him for. That's what, you know, that's what the whole game plan was put around. And I'd be really keen to see how he slots into a Steve Larkham attack, because I think it could go to another level.
Yeah, no, it's like unbelievably exciting, and you're trying not to get too ahead of yourself because we know the injury profile and the history as well. Last question for you. We've been asking Alan Quinlan, you know, are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? And last week he couldn't quite answer it for us. He was kind of still. We were just coming off the back of the fairly, you know, it was a really powerful game between Leinster and Munster. I think he was still a little bit down about the fact that Munster hadn't got it done. Wasn't quite ready to be excited about this. But we're all stupid sports fans. We're like, you know, pre-tournament is the perfect time because, well, maybe if it all breaks our way and if England get a few injuries, who knows? We've got them at home. So are you optimistic or pessimistic at the moment?
Yeah, look, I'm hugely optimistic. Look, I can't wait for the Wales game next week. I think it feels like it's been such a long year since this time last year. So any kind of live sport and rugby especially makes me incredibly excited about what's going to happen. I do think there were huge elements of that Munster-Leinster game that will make me, you know, incredibly excited about what's to come. And I think the way certain players in Connacht and international players in Ulster have been playing, I think people are playing in form, and they've been working really hard in terms of their strength and their fitness and stuff. So if they can develop that game plan more, that especially in attack, I would be incredibly optimistic. But there's a question mark over the ability to attack space as opposed to bodies.
One final thing, Niamh, is just to wrap up our next generation picks. Who have you gone for here? We usually get 3 here. So who are you looking at the back 3?
Yeah, I went with Aaron Sexton and Ethan McElroy from Ulster and Max O'Reilly from Leinster. I think Ethan McElroy is obviously broken into that Ulster squad already, and he's incredibly exciting. And Max O'Reilly, to be fair, has got game time with Leinster over the last couple of weeks. But Aaron Sexton is definitely one to look out for. I think an international sprinter who's given up his sprinting career to play rugby professionally. Yeah, he looks like a really good pick.
Good stuff. Thanks a million, Niamh. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a million.
Niamh Briggs giving us some thoughts there on the depth chart for the back 3 and also what we do with our glut of 10s. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, you can WhatsApp the show 0879 180 180. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. What's your back 3, Eoin? Who are you picking?
I am not... Like, before listening to Niamh, I wasn't convinced that it is a done deal that Hugo Keenan is going to be the starting fullback for Ireland. I thought that Larmour or maybe even Conway had a really good shout at that position. After listening to her, it's clearly going to be Hugo Keenan, and I am officially swayed. I think Keith Earls obviously has to start, and then I think it probably comes down to opposition again. I think Andrew Conway perhaps edges Jordan Larmour. But it's such a hard one to pick. Like, I mean, 12 months ago, it looked like Larmour and Conway were going to be the 2 undroppables in that back 3. Keith Earls has come back to full fitness and has been brilliant. And then you've had Keenan absolutely bolt from the blue, I guess, in the context of the last 12 months or so. So those 2 players are perhaps not 2 that you would have fully counted on going into this year's Six Nations. And as a result, one of Conway or Larmour has to lose out. And gun to my head, I'd pick Conway in an overall sense because he would start every game and would be versatile enough to do well against any opposition.
News came through as well that Ian Madigan has re-upped at Ulster. I'd say Ulster was a potential landing spot for JJ Hanrahan if you could partner him with Cooney. That'd be a perfect scenario for him where he doesn't have to do the kicks, but actually his all-round game has been excellent. So that's not going to happen. Anyway, let's move on. 8:43 this morning. John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, Jerno, and yourselves?
Yeah, big shock last night.
1973 was when Red Rum was winning his first Grand National. Now, Limerick were the hurling champions, so not much has changed there, but that was the last time Sheffield United beat Manchester United at Old Trafford, a 2-1 win. You have to say deserved. United had taken 33 of their previous 39 points in the league, but is it really title-winning form to be losing matches to Crystal Palace and Sheffield United at home, Spurs and Arsenal? Been great on the road, but flat as pancakes United last night, and you'd have to think with Manchester City's form that could be costly come May. So a 2-1 defeat. Elsewhere, Thomas Tuchel. Well, just before we actually hear from Thomas Tuchel, let's hear the explanation from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
The boys have been absolutely terrific for the last few months. They've been really consistent, high performance level, and tonight was our night to not hit those levels. And when you don't, in the Premier League, you don't get results.
Yeah, we can't really put his finger on why, I don't think. So Thomas Tuchel, the reign in charge of Chelsea, has begun with a goalless draw against Wolves. What about the youth? Well, how are the English riders going to cope with all of this stuff? The fact that Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Reece James were all left on the bench as Thomas Tuchel went for experience. Lack of a cutting edge from Chelsea, but he's going to need a lot of time, and he was happy with what he saw.
I have to say, I just walked in the dressing room and told everybody there is no room for disappointment now. There's no room for doubts. In the opposite, I was very happy with the performance. Energy-wise, with our intensity, we had, I think, 16 recoveries in the last third. We were very structured. We did not allow any counterattacks, dangerous counterattacks, to one of the most dangerous team in counterattacks. So we were very well organized. We were brave. We had courage, and we played really as a team.
Now, just one thing on that. That is the complete polar opposite of how Frank Lampard would have thrown his team under the bus after a 0-0 draw against a team that they should have beaten. And I think that in the medium term, that's going to have... Well, actually, I think in the immediate term, that's going to have some dividends for that dressing room, who are, you know, unbelievably rich, successful, athletic individuals who have reached the absolute pinnacle of their sport and did not like being called rubbish and bottlers by the man whose job it was to set them up tactically. I suspect that there's going to be, there will be a Tuchel bump, and I think it's going to start coming pretty quick.
A bigger bounce than Joe Biden's going to get in his first 100 days, Thomas Tuchel. It's interesting, Damien Delaney was speaking last Saturday on the show, and he was saying that they might get an awful rollicking from their manager in the dressing room, and then he'd go out in front of the media and blame the referee or say the lads were great, and then the lads really appreciated that. And Damien was saying that what Frank Lampard was doing, like after the Arsenal game, for example, or having to go to journalists, wouldn't have gone down well with the players. They would have sensed, you know, this guy is cracking a little bit here under the pressure. So Thomas Tuchel, you can already, even from listening to him there, you can tell elite manager, Paris Saint-Germain, Champions League final, and Chelsea will just go back into this rhythm now, I think, but it's going to take a while of playing elite football, you'd have to think, under Thomas Tuchel, if he gets the best tune out of his players. Elsewhere, Everton and Leicester drawing 1-1. Burnley beating Aston Villa 3-2 last night. Goals between Brighton and Fulham. Spurs v Liverpool tonight, 8 o'clock start at the new White Hart Lane. Jordan Henderson said to be back in the Liverpool team. Joel Matip fit as well. Shane Lowry and GMAC have started their rounds at the Dubai Desert Classic. The lead shared at the moment on 6 under par by Sergio Garcia, Adrian Otaegui and Justin Harding. Rory McIlroy tees off at 6:40 this evening at the Farmers Insurance Open on the US Tour in California. John Ram also in the field for that one. The French have yet to decide on their plans, their authorities, to field a rugby team in the Six Nations. They're committed to playing Italy for the opening round, which is the week after this weekend, the weekend of the 6th and 7th of Feb. But not beyond that due to the COVID crisis. Ireland beginning their campaign away to Wales on Sunday week, due to play France here in Dublin on Valentine's Day. And the race that stops the county, that's High Estes Chase, has a 3:25 start at Goran Park today. First run in 1954, the race. It goes to post at that time. Heavy ground, the first of 7 races underway, lads, at 1:15.
Do you know who's going to win the High Estes?
I don't, but I have made a stab at it in thinking that 2A per me, the French sounding horse from Noel Meade's yard. Noel Meade has never won the High Estes Chase in all his years of training, is about a 16-1 chance to finish in the top 6. He's been running in better races, and I think he could have an each-way chance to be in the frame. 2A per me.
Okay, so we put up a screen grab of your column, which is available on otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app. You're writing about stuff that you're missing, events that you want to go to that you'd normally be at. What else is on your list of stuff that you know you're going to go to as soon as you're vaccinated and it's allowed?
Well, Jared, that will depend on your generosity, obviously. That's the first thing. The second thing, well, right now I'll be on the bus to Gorn. You'd have the fry up in the Lord Bagnall in Carlow. You'd be doing the group bet. You'd be arriving in mucky Gorn Park with the, where you're wearing your suit, your best shirt, your mohair, but then you'd be wearing runners because it'd be like so mucky. Then you're
not wellies. Do you not have a pair of racing, a fancy pair of hunters?
No. It's either loafers for the summer or runners. And then you'd be going out upstairs, you'd be getting your slathered in gravy dinner. It'd be just literally gravy that you're eating. And then you're having your few pints, and then you just don't know where it's going to lead. And that's the great thing about it. What am I looking forward to? A hurling final with 80,000 fans. I don't think there's anything better in the world. Going to a Premier League game. So many people have so many rituals. I know yourself, Jerry, you probably have plenty of rituals around hurling or rugby, and Eoin the same around Kerry football. And it's just like the people you meet, we're going to go to this place. Like I know, for example, for like Croke Park, I always go to the Brian Boru pub there before the game, because you get your good carvery, and then you walk down and you see all the supporters walking down by the canal towards Croke Park, going on the tube to Seven Sisters to see Spurs. This is what we live for. We must obviously be patient and sacrifice, because the very serious things that go on in society. But these things I will never, not that I took them for granted before, but I will never take anything like that for granted again, just the savouring the moments. And that's what the column is about today. All right, looking forward to getting stuck into that. It's on otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app as well. And you should follow John on Twitter, of course. It is 8:50 this morning. Thanks, John. I want to talk about this up close and personal. This has been a brilliant series where we get people together and they talk about each other who are involved in sport. We've had some brilliant stuff with Mark Lawrenson and Jason McAteer as part of this series already, and it's time for us to get into our next one, brought to you in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the morning ahead. This is Irish Olympians Natalya, Coyle and Arthur Lanigan-O'Keeffe getting up close and personal.
Hi, I'm Natalya Coyle and I'm getting up close and personal with my fiance Arthur Lanigan-O'Keeffe. So Arthur, do you want to explain what's about to happen in the other room before we start our questions and answers?
For anyone who doesn't know, we have two miniature dachshunds. One is called Hansel, one is called Rufus. And Hansel has just vomited all over the kitchen floor. So we're going to have to clean it up. Yeah. Oh, did you move the chair? Are they going to eat the cookies?
They're not going to eat the cookies, no. Hopefully not. Oh God, I hope not.
Is the bench far enough pulled apart?
I don't know.
Really quick?
Yeah, you're going to have to go check. Sorry,
okay,
guys.
Pause this 1 sec.
Hansel has learned how to jump up on the table, and 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were at home, he ate a whole block of butter. So we're just Arthur's going to have to check that, because he vomited butter all over the floor. And it's not something I want to repeat. So he'll be back in a momentary second. Our dog training obviously is going splendid.
My suspicions were correct. I caught Hansel on the table halfway through all the cookies. So, yeah.
So, Arthur, what was your first impression of me? Going to go hard. When did we first meet? First tell everyone that, and then you can give the first impression.
We first met when I was 15, she was 16. We met in the Alsa track just by the airport. And I suppose I was young at that stage. And I was in an all boys boarding school. So whenever I met another girl that was very chatty and stuff, I'd say I fancied you a little bit. You didn't make a crazy impression. But yeah, you're very chatty, really easy to talk to, I suppose. But yeah, it was good. It was a good impression, but it wasn't love at first sight, I'd say.
I actually don't remember meeting you then either, so that's probably how much of an impression you made upon me. No offense, but yeah,
I know that.
Yeah,
I know that answer.
I was wondering, one of the questions I was wondering sports-wise was, what was your worst ever moment in sport? It can be in training, it can be competitions, training camps, or anything.
Oh, I've had a few bad ones. I've had a few shockers. I think the one that comes to mind most is there's two. There's two. First one was the last qualification competition for London Olympics. And it was something called the World Cup Final. And I was doing really, really well. And went into the riding arena, and my horse eliminated the athlete beforehand. And then it stopped, and then the stirrup snapped, and it threw me sideways off the horse, and then refused another, I don't know how many more fences or whatever. And I remember calculating the end of the competition, and I could have had 7 knockdowns and still come second. And all I needed to do was finish 17th or something. And obviously later on I qualified anyway because an athlete was banned for steroids. But at the time, that was why I thought I wasn't going to qualify. So that was a really hard moment for me. And then the other moment was in the Rio Olympics in the fencing. I don't know what happened, started really well. And then I hesitated against someone I usually hit. And suddenly I just decided that my moves didn't work anymore. And I went around the rest of the round with hesitation. And I knew kind of after that I wasn't going to win a medal, and that was devastating. So they're the two worst moments for me in my sport. What about you?
I think probably one of mine isn't actually well, it is competition, but it's not like a major. Was at Cairo Worlds when I think I could have been placed third before the combined in the Worlds. I'm not sure, really high anyway. And I remember I just kept dropping because I just couldn't really run. And I remember being it was post Rio, and I remember just being like, oh, do I want to do this anymore? But obviously I've changed my mind. But that was probably one of the lowest. I remember just like third lap in being being overlapped by athletes behind me, being like, oh. But anyway, enough of the sadness. So I'm trying to think, what was your best moment from an Olympics? Like the kind of quirkiest one, like different one, like not just about sport kind of.
The best moment, quirkiest moment about sport. Gonna be honest, I suppose I don't know if it was a great moment now, but I was gonna say the relief when my riding jacket arrived. If anyone doesn't know, I forgot my riding jacket in the Rio Olympics, and I only realized after the swimming event, and the venue was like, I don't know, was it 2 hours away from the village?
So far.
And we had to get someone to go to the village, go into my room, get the jacket.
Martin Burke,
Yeah, Martin Burke, and try to get back to the competition in time. And I had to get on the horse eventually without the jacket, and all the officials kept saying, okay, you need to put on your jacket now, you need to put on your jacket. And we were pretending, because it was so warm, that I'll put it on before I get into the arena. And I only got my jacket 2 minutes before. So it was fairly hairy. And
like that. It's awful.
I was so afraid of just kind of basically nationwide humiliation, basically. Forgetting your riding jacket at the Olympics would have been pretty embarrassing. But after that, everything went well. So that was a nice turning point for me. It was when my riding jacket arrived. Was a huge sigh of relief. What about yourself?
I think obviously the Olympics is sport, but out of sport, the first games when I got to meet Usain Bolt at the opening ceremony, that was very cool. We were, the story, but we were walking in, and I and Jay are obviously very close to each other on the alphabet. And I remember just standing beside someone from Jamaica being like, oh, wouldn't it be so cool if I got to meet Usain Bolt? And he was like, of course, I'll just bring you in. And that person was Asaf Appel. So obviously wasn't up to date on my athletics knowledge then, and then got to go in. He was surrounded by bodyguards, and myself and Tori Penna went in and got to take a photo, but my photo is so blurry you can barely tell who it is. So, but that was a really cool moment, I thought. That, and always walking in, because I've done it twice now, I think always going to check out the dining hall, being like, what's it going to be like? That's always what I like doing and the most.
What's the best and most annoying thing about me?
Oh God. The best thing about you is probably you're always so willing to help, and it's not just with me, it's with anyone. If anyone asks you a question, you'll always try and help as much as you can. And I'm so case an example is I'm really bad with technology, and I'll be trying to turn something on or make it work, and I'll never get it, and Arthur will always help. That's probably one of your not your best quality, but you've got so many, is one of really good quality. Your worst one is probably I do it as well, but it's a bad quality for both of us, is when we've made dinner and we're really tired and we eat the dinner and we're like, we'll just clean it up tomorrow, we'll just do it in the morning.
And then it builds and builds. Same with laundry. Oh, we'll hang it up tomorrow, and then you have to put it on again because it starts to smell. Yeah. If you're a pentathlete, you do a lot of laundry. Yeah. You have to change 5 whole changes of clothes throughout each day. So it builds up very fast.
It builds. And what about me?
I'm going to start, because there's so many good things. I'm going to start with the thing that annoys me most. I'm actually going to ask if you're going to guess.
Is
drives
it
me
leaving
mad.
little bits in the bottom of the cereal bowl?
Yeah, it is so annoying. It's so Natalya always pours just too much cereal for the amount that she's going to eat, and then leaves it harden and connect to the bowl.
I don't mean
So when
to.
you go to clean it, it's like I don't know.
It's like cement.
Excavating. Yeah, literally like cement. And I just, her New Year's resolution, like requested by me, is to just eat whatever is in your bowl.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of good things, I must say, but maybe just like your energy, you're always so chirpy and happy. And if I get a bit more, I suppose if I get a bit kind of gloomy or something, you always bring me back up out of it. So I think you probably see in the interview how chirpy and happy you usually are. So, and that is genuinely what she's like in real life as well. So that's probably a pretty damn good one. Oh, here's a good one. If you could give 20-year-old Natalya 3 pieces of advice, what would they be?
20. So the next year I'm going to the games, I think. I think I'd probably tell her now, hindsight's obviously a great thing. Sport wise, I'd tell her to relax a bit more, because I think when I was younger and everything I took really, really seriously, which is the right thing to do, but also it means you kind of, sometimes you're just overwhelmed by it all the whole time. Like there's no kind of taking a break and taking your foot off the pedal isn't a bad thing. Whereas especially when I was like 20, I would have been, if I was like sick at all, I'd be like, oh no, I'll just train through it. Now I've learned that obviously not to do that, but just that's an example. I think that's one thing. Another is to probably stay in touch with education more, which people said to me at the time, but I remember being like, I don't have time for that. And it's like, there is time if you can make your week better, because that would be something that, you know, would be great to have kind of kept in touch after doing my first, after doing a degree. And then after that would be, trying to think, I think just to maybe enjoy the highs more, because I think that it's easier said than done in the moment. You know, when we won our first, so then I was very far, a couple of years away from winning my first medal, and that was with you when we were winning a relay medal. And I think that, like, sometimes you just get the medal or have the really good performance, and the next day you're straight on to the next thing. What's the next competition? And I think Martin Irvine, I remember, told me in the Institute of Sport before, being like, just to really like ride those highs and to enjoy the process when you've won a medal or had a really good performance, because a lot of the time it's our mentality just to skip straight across the next thing. And I think that's, I'd tell her, I'd be like, enjoy those. What about you? What would you tell Arthur?
They were actually fairly close to what I would have told myself. I suppose, like, specifically, there's a few things. One would be, if you're having a bad training session or a bad day, doesn't mean, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, that meant training was going badly or I was unfit. I would read into way too much into how I felt on a given day. And I would have emotional highs and emotional lows. I would kind of ride the way I was feeling. Whereas now I try to stay much more level. And if I'm having a bad day, I just accept it, listen to my body, go a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And then, but know that I'm not unfit, know that, trust the work and everything. Yeah. So it means that it's just emotionally a lot easier, kind of similar to you take it a little less, relax a little bit. And the second one would have been not to be so complacent going into Rio. I feel like I was so confident because everything had gone the way I'd wanted to beforehand. And I think everyone, as you said, like, that was kind of infectious. Everyone kind of around me sort of believed it too. I think everyone, and I just didn't think there was any possibility of not winning. And obviously there was, it's pentathlon. There's so many possibilities of not winning. So I didn't want to hear of any scenarios of things going wrong. So, and as soon as they did, I wasn't mentally equipped with a plan B. So I definitely would have worked a little bit more, maybe with Kate Kirby, around like what you're so good at is mental kind of resilience in middle of fencing, and having, plan A, plan B, plan C. Whereas I was purely on winner, or win. There was nothing else in mind. And I don't think there was anything else in most of the coaches' minds either. So that was a major mistake. And I'm hopefully not going to make that mistake again in Tokyo. I think I've learned from that. And And then, yeah, I think what you said about like enjoying the highs is a really important one. Like, I think by the nature of it, when you win something or when you get a really good result, it naturally makes you want to jump into training and train harder, because you're buzzing off the results. Whereas really what you want to be doing is something close to the opposite. You want to be like really taking time to enjoy it instead of the next day being in the pool, you know, like training harder than ever. You need to be able to recognize those moments, step back and enjoy them. So yeah, they're probably my three as well.
Yeah, they're good ones.
Okay, our dream house in 10 to 15 years, what will it look like? Where will it be? Provided we have the wherewithal.
We've oodles of money, do we?
Yeah, budget.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
No
a
budget.
successful entrepreneur or filming Hollywood movies, either one.
Okay, cool. No budget. I think I'd have. I don't know where I do love Meath, I have to say. I think there would be a lot of glass involved. It'd be pretty minimalist inside. But I'd love a grass roof. Like, I'd love some flowers on the old roof. It would be the most self-sustaining house that I possibly could be built.
Yeah. Bush type job, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one thing that you definitely have would be the biggest bath they could find.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a bath, yeah, I must say. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd have a gym as well.
Really cool gym.
From the pandemic days, you realize how important it is to have a space to be able to exercise. And I'm hoping there's not going to be another pandemic, but I'm going to I will be prepared just in case there's another outbreak or something like that.
My final question is, what's your favorite Netflix documentary? You give me two.
Oh, that's tough. Oh God. Oh Jesus.
I'll go first then, and I've already forgotten the name of it, but I absolutely love the Cheerleading one.
Oh yeah, Cheer. That's very well.
I love Cheer. I love Cheer.
Like, I had no idea about cheerleading, and at the end of it, I was an avid fan. So like.
And then I also loved My Octopus Teacher.
That was very good too. I thought Icarus was very good.
The
way it unfolded, and it got a lot of people talking. I thought that was very good. And also, the thing I liked so much about it is that often, like, kind of Russians are depicted as evil. Where I feel like a lot of people kind of finished that movie going with the doctor, the Russian doctor who was responsible for so many of the doping plans, left thinking that they kind of liked him, like he was an okay person, but the system
morally not
so bad. Oh yeah, morals are wrong. You know, the culture there is so different. But you know, like a lot of times, like, and it changed my view about a lot of, like, say, athletes that I've been competing with that have done drugs. I used to think they were just evil and bad people, whereas now I question more things like, you know, did they have a choice? Like, what was their life if they didn't take the drugs? Would they have been on the program? Would they have been kicked to the side? Yeah. Would they, you know, do they have anything to fall back on? And were they made take it by other coaches? So
did they know?
Yeah, I'd say in most cases they know. But we're in a privileged situation where, like, you know, if someone offers us drugs, we can say no, and we can be thrown off pentathlon, and we can get a job and have a good future. Whereas that's not always the case for everyone else. Yeah. So I feel like, obviously, no tolerance for it at all within sport. But I almost feel like they should ban the coaches and the people around
100%
in most of the instances. So I feel like I've gotten a little bit more empathy, and actually just a little bit after watching that, I just, my perspective changed a little bit. And I think that's a sign of a good documentary.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the ball.
There he goes, 1-2, opens up, back for Sadio Mane, and it was coming. Mane scores for Liverpool. What a wonderfully worked team goal.
Jurgen Klopp's champions will hope to rediscover some form on the road in the Premier League this Sunday. Liverpool travel to West Ham for a 4:30 kick-off, and we'll have full live match commentary on Off the Ball with Vinnie Perth alongside Stephen Doyle. Before that, it's Brian Kerr and Nathan Murphy on duty as Leicester welcome Leeds to the King Power. We'll have the paper review as usual too, all to look forward to on this Sunday's Off the Ball, live from 1 until 7.
Off the Ball, don't miss a moment of the action every weekend from 1 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Check out the Boyle Sports app today for details on which football match is getting the no-lose treatment this week. Plus, browse through dozens of new player markets, all powered by Opta. Shots on target, left foot, right foot, headed goals, assists and more. See the Boyle Sports app for full T's and C's. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie 18+.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
United fans will always love Damien Delaney for his goal at the start of the Palace comeback in the 3-3 draw with Liverpool. That is from Martin.
Yeah, I love United fans as well. You know, I've got nothing personally against anyone.
It's just business. It's just business.
It's an opinion.
It's just business. It's just business. You're just saying that, you know, you don't think United will win.
It's agenda. Call it what it is. That's what
I like Man United. I want to see them dominate again. I want to see them back on top.
Off the Ball, Saturdays from 1 on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app. OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scholesy were out every night, probably night before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
This Saturday afternoon should just be Damien Delaney on the phone, on the radio, I'm talking about, on the phone to everybody who had texted in going, oh, why are you giving out of it, Man United again, Damien, what do we ever do? And he's just ringing them going, hello, it's Damien Delaney here. I'm just going to read you back the text that you sent me last week. It could be 4 hours of top quality radio, I'm telling you. Or like finding the actual tweeters in person and presenting to them a list of the tweets that they've made, giving him crap. You should see the DMs that we get about that. It's like, man has opinion about my football team which disagrees about my football team. Football fans are the best and sometimes the worst. 11 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB. And let me tell you about what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio. You can get this on our sports app, OTB Sports app, for nothing. Or you can get it on our website. You just click the play button on radio, or you tell Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio, and away she goes. OTB Gold, Cora Staunton at 1 o'clock. Brilliant interview with Cora. State of the Union with Philip Brown. We did this at the first height of the pandemic, and it feels now at the third height of the pandemic that it's as relevant and pertinent and urgent as it was then. Our retro panel at 4 o'clock is Tyrone GAA's Golden Days. That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm just trying to remember exactly who was on that panel. I'll give you the details on that, but if you want to know about the team of the Naughties, then you got to listen to that. OTB Gold, Bod meets Easter at 6, and then tonight live, John Giles, Stuart Lancaster on our OTB Future series and the football show as well. We've got Johnny Sexton coming up on tomorrow night's Off the Ball, so make sure you download the OTB Sports app and you get on it as soon as you can. Now, we're counting down to Cheltenham every week on Thursdays. At this time, Thom Malone joins us to talk to us about what we should be planning for now, any market moves that we might be able to get on before the rest of the public wakes up to it. Tom, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, Joe. How are you? You well?
Yeah. So, what are we, 7 weeks out now?
Yeah, less than 49 days now. I think we're 47 days. This day 7 weeks, so we'll be looking forward to the stairs hurdle. So we'll be in the thick of it by then. But yeah, it was 7 weeks on Tuesday there. So yeah, very, very, very close, especially when you think that a lot of trainers won't kind of run their horses within 6 weeks of the festival. So it's probably between now and kind of the Dublin Racing Festival, that'll probably be the last chance we'll get to see any runners, particularly in the Grade 1 races, who will go and compete in Cheltenham.
Okay, well look, let's talk about it's the Champion Chase is what you're focusing on this week. This is your favourite race of the festival, I'm reliably informed. What is the Champion Chase? What distance? What type of horses?
Yeah, this is the 2 mile Champion Chase. This is my favourite race. It is flat out, just jumping at full tilt. A little bit of stamina comes into play, but really like the superstars of the game over the years, Sprinter Sacre Altior, the likes of Moscow Flyer in the day, Flagship Liberales, Azerti up, sizing Europe, an absolutely brilliant champion chaser as well. So 2 miles, feature race on Wednesday, the Queen Mother Champion Chase. And look, like I said, for me, it's the most exciting race of the festival. Some people will say the Gold Cup is their favourite race, but slow horses can win Gold Cups. Slow horses cannot win the Champion Chase. It's 2 miles, absolutely flat to the mat. You have to jump and you have to be quick. So I just absolutely love it. A lot of people would compare it to the sprinters of the athletics world.
I was actually going to say
2 mile Champion Chases. Yeah.
Well, it feels a little bit like if say the Gold Cup is the 1500 metres. Then this is the 400 metres hurdles, and it's pell-mell, hell for leather, no room for any mistakes.
Absolutely none. And I mean, that is just what, I think of horses like, say, Big Zeb over the years, how on earth he won this race. Barry Garrity just gave him the ride of all time actually, Barry Garrity did something similar as well with one of Nicky Henderson's. But you need to jump and get there. And you can't do like a champ and, be 20 lengths off coming to the second last and stay on up the hill. It's just phenomenal pace. And like I say, there is just very, very little room for error.
Okay, so this year, who are the superstars that we're going to be looking for on Queen Mother Champion Chase Day?
Well, amazingly, considering the success he's had over the years, Willie Mullins has actually never trained the winner of this race. And when you think of the horses he's had, the likes of Duvan, the likes of Andesso over the years, even Champagne Fever, he never kind of hit the heights over fences, even though he should have. He's never won this race. Duvan got beaten at nearly 1-5 in it one year, but he has Sheahan Poursois, who's favourite. Of course, the problem with this race is that you end up with these big name horses, Altior, Sprinter Sacre, Sheahan Poursois, and they kind of sometimes scare off the opposition. So last year we ended up with a Defi de Soy, really short price favourite in just a 5-runner field, because Sheahan Poursois and Altior were both non-runners in the sort of lead up to the race. Again, Sheahan Poursois is your favourite. He has actually done very, very little wrong since we saw him last. The question is Altior. He's about a 9-1 shot. Sheahan Poursois is very warm with a favourite. He's going to run again at the Dublin Racing Festival. You expect him to win there. He's round about even money. There's a bit of odds against in places, and then it's sort of 10-1 bar. But it's very much about seeing whether Willie Mullins can actually get one of his big superstars to land at the Champion Chase, cherry ripe on the day in Sheahan Poursois.
Why is Altior such a big price?
Altior is such a big price because he's been beaten twice in his last 3 runs, Altior's record is 15 out of 17 over fences, but he's now only won from his last 3. He stepped up to 2.5 miles last year, and he was beaten by Suriname. There's a big kind of hoo-ha about Suriname actually having a higher rating than Altior that a lot of people would have disputed, but then Altior stepped up in trip. Now look, Altior is now 11. You have to go back to, I think, Moscow Flyer. The last time an 11-year-old won this race this century, and before Moscow Flyer, the last time was the late 70s when an 11-year-old won this race. So it's very, very rare. We haven't seen Altior run. You know what I mean? He was beaten by Noob Negra at Christmas. That was in what should have been ideal conditions. And for the first time ever, he's also been given an entry Ryanair chase, which suggests the connections. Well, Nick at a point has said it already, that he does need to step up in trip, and he probably doesn't have that top-end pace he had before. He's looking like he's just a little bit slower in races, which is fine. But, for a champion chase, if he's going to beat a peak Sheahan Poursois, the odds are very much against Altior, and that's why he is sort of a 9-10-1 shot. Okay.
As far as I can remember, the history of recent Cheltenhams is awash with a one horse at the top of the field that everybody anoints months in advance being turned over on the day.
Yeah, well, that's like I say. Like last year, Sheahan Poursois, he actually travelled to Cheltenham. He's only actually been to Cheltenham once, and that was last year. And he picked up a stone bruise, which is just one of the most innocuous, annoying injuries a horse can get, because they're literally fine 24 or 48 hours later. So they're just they're very, very irritating. Again, Defi de Soy in this race, he's 33-1 for it right now. He was 2-5 favourite. So you put on a 5, you only win €2. For this race last year when I ended up a 5-runner race. And we looked down the field, you got Politolog, he won it last year. He was beaten at the weekend down the Clarence House Chase by a horse called First Flow, who's very much an up-and-coming force in the 2-mile chasing division. He's intriguing. He's won his last 6 in a row now, progressing up through the ranks. So that's a really nice little story as well. He's trained by Kim Bailey. Kim Bailey's last Grade 1 winner was in 1995.
Wow.
So quite a long time between drinks for him. But yeah, incredible for Kim Bailey to have to wait that long for another Grade 1 winner. But like, I mean, a brilliant trainer. He trained a champion hurdle, national winner in the 90s as well. But yeah, First Flow is intriguing. But one I would certainly look to at a price, a horse called Notebook, who was one of those beaten short price favourites last year at Cheltenham in the Arkle. He was actually beaten by a stablemate, Put the Kettle On. But at 20-1, I definitely think Notebook could be one. Look, he might beat Sheahan for spot. He finished second to him at Leopardstown last time out, and I'd certainly think at 20-1, because I know you love me to tip up something at a big price. That he's one we could tip up each way.
Okay. How far is the Arkle? What distance does that run over?
Well, the Arkle is the sort of novice event for this. So the Arkle is also a 2-mile chase for the novices. That's what Fishkin is going to be a really warm water favourite for this year. That's what Put the Kettle On won last year. She's actually stablemate of Notebook, and she's actually has an incredible record at Cheltenham. She's 3 from 3, but it is a little unheralded.
Okay. What else happened last weekend that we should be looking at? You mentioned First Flow there. Anything else going on that kind of is beginning to influence people's thoughts this far out?
Well, I think First Flow was the major problem we've had with racing over the last couple of weeks. There's been so little of it, particularly in Ireland. We're going to have a rescheduled Testes chase today. First Flow really burst onto the scene, that story with Kim Bailey. And there's kind of not been a massive amount else positive going on in the world of racing, thanks to this Charles Burns saga that's kind of running and running. Intriguingly, RTE will be at Gorin today for the Testes, and Charles Burns will have a runner. So it's a very short price favourite as well. So intrigued to see if that wins live in Natalya and Charles gets interviewed afterwards.
Yeah, or declines the opportunity to speak. Right, was there one last thing that we need to talk about there? Royal Pagal, did we talk about that?
Royal Pagal, sorry. Yes, this is a fascinating horse who is trained by Venetia Williams, who carries the very famous Rich Ritchie colours, and he won the Peter Marsh at Weatherby last weekend, at Haydock last weekend rather, which is a sort of tradition. Used to be back in the day a traditional Gold Cup trial, but has really phased out of fashion in the last sort of 15, 20 years. Anyway, this horse has gone and absolutely hosed up. He's still a novice, but he's very experienced over fences. He's trained by Rich Ritchie, but he's owned by Venetia Williams. So normally those horses are trained by Willie Mullins, and he's a novice, so he should be going for the RSA or the 4-miler. But it's highly unlikely that Rich Ritchie's already got Monkfish. He's favourite for the RSA. I'd be intrigued. I doubt he's going to go over 4 miles, so he could have the prospect of a novice running in the Gold Cup, which is always exciting. Intriguingly, he's run more fences than he's a full season stage, and he might be making an appearance this weekend in Trials Weekend at Cheltenham.
Tom, good stuff. We'll leave it there. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Apologies for the quality of the line there, but that's the vagaries of Skype. 22 minutes past 9 here on OTB AM. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180. We're with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We're talking about the crossover, the curious world of the crossover between WWE and professional rugby. It turns out WWE want a load of professional rugby players to come and, come and get concussed in the ring instead of being concussed on the field of play. That's coming your way in about 15, 20 minutes' time. We're going to talk with Sue Murphy about OTB AM's TV picks, stuff you might have missed, stuff that's out now, and whatever you're having yourself. But I want to talk about this as well. Billy Walsh was the latest guest in our OTB Future of Sports series last night on Off the Ball. The full chat is worth checking out on the OTB Podcast Network or youtube.com/Off the Ball. You can subscribe to both. Here's Billy talking about the positive influence amateur boxing clubs can have on society.
Tough street, Woodstone Villas, and so it was an escape for me to be there, and it kept the discipline it taught me, to keep me on the straight and narrow, to keep me away from a lot of the guys I knocked around with in the street ended up getting in trouble and all of that sort of stuff. So boxing kept me. I had a focus of that, and I knew that if I misbehaved outside of the club, I wasn't going to be there back into it. And I loved it that much. I wanted that more than anything else. So that's what boxing club does for the community. The club. A lot of the parents would get involved in the club because the coach is usually there mostly on his own. You have a small committee and they're trying to raise funds. It might take lucky to get some subs off the boxers coming in. You might get 20 pence maybe at the time. 20 pence subs if you're lucky to get that every week. So like it wasn't because most of the kids came from the private backgrounds. They weren't making money from it. Whereas in the USA, over here it's really it's a business. You have a gym. It is your livelihood. You collect your rent or your money from people, the clients that come in to train. So that's how they survive over here. It is actually their business. Whereas in Ireland, it's more a volunteer-based situation where people go to work during the day and even time to go to the sport that they love and train all these kids to become champions. And then obviously I was at the lucky end of it. When I became a coach, that I was a coach in the club first, and then I got the head coach of the USA, of the Irish boxing team, and I was able to take those guys in and then bring them on to the next level for international boxing. But the club system in Ireland is fantastic. The amount of talent that we produce year in, year out, it's phenomenal. And as I said to you, all these guys are volunteers.
Yeah, look, I think we all had a sense of the role the boxing club can play, and I've certainly seen it in Athy, the impact that it's had on many lives. And Eric Donovan's a brilliant speaker about the impact that it's had on him and his life. But it's not a straight line, and they need all the help and all the support they can get. So we absolutely need to protect grassroots sport however we possibly can. And just think about the role that it's going to play over the next couple of years as kids who haven't been allowed to go out and hang around or haven't been in school and who've missed out on all that socialisation, what is going to happen and what we're storing up for ourselves. So plenty more for us to get stuck into in the future about this topic and also about the future. So the hashtag is OTB Future. You can get all of our information there, and we put all the podcasts from this in an individual strand as well, so you can subscribe to it, and I've no doubt that it's something we're going to keep coming back to over the next while. So we'd love to hear from you. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, you can DM us on Twitter if you've got a story, or just tweet us. The conversation is happening. It's happening all over. It's happening about PE, it's happening about fitness, it's happening about funding, it's happening about women's sport, it's happening about loads of stuff, and we're just trying to be a platform for that. So, right, Sue Murphy, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So this is our weekly TV section where we point out a shiny new thing that people can stream. We recommend something that you might have missed that's really good, that's out and available to get at the moment. And then Eoin's going to update us on Wrestling with the Sopranos, 20 years late, but better late than never. So what's the shiny new thing that we can stream at the moment?
There are two shiny new things, but I wanted to quickly mention The Dig, which is coming out on Netflix tomorrow, because I think the trailer and the description of this are not going to do it any service at all. I saw it earlier this week, and it's the story of Basil Brown, who was an excavator. He discovered just before World War II a really huge Anglo-Saxon find, and that makes it sound really boring, and it is not at all. It's his relationship with the woman who owned the estate that he actually completed the excavation work on is just an amazing, like, it's the main part of the film. And then the background is the dig and everything that's happening around that. But it's Ray Fiennes who plays Basil Brown, and it's Carrie Mulligan who plays the Mrs. Pretty is her name. She owns the estate. And honestly, that description makes it sound awful, and it's really just a lovely, lovely film.
Maybe this is more of a representation of me than anybody else, but that description absolutely does sell it for me. I do not need to see a trailer. I'll be watching it. It sounds class.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like it was a Discovery Channel or a National Geographic kind of thing. I was like, nobody's going to watch this. Channel. It just sounds for you, not for everyone. Well, I feel that way about it as well. Like, when they started doing the actual dig, I was like, this is amazing. But no, it's just a very, like, heartfelt, sad film. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in their lives, and she's lost her husband, she lost her father, lost her husband quite soon after, and she's looking after her young son. she gets quite sick herself, and his marriage is kind of on the, you know, it's not that great.
How do we know what was going to happen? A little bit of romance over some buried treasure, eh?
But it's not. It's not. It's kind.
Is he not like 60 years older than her?
Yeah, and it was so funny actually. The first time I watched this trailer, I was like, "There we go, another young woman and an older man." But that's actually it's very representative of the true story.
All right, okay. Another English comedy which is chased ultimately. It's like, oh, Remains of the Day remade for the millennial generation. Hooray!
Yeah, it did actually feel like that a little bit. But to be honest, like we're really starved for good films at the moment. They're coming out. There just seem to be whatever is going, they will put it up. But this is actually very good, and I just feel like people will just skip over it. Okay. And it's not. It's worth a watch.
Okay, it's called The Dig. It's out on Friday on Netflix. I just want to point out too that you're talking to Eoin. He's a man who loves those late-night National Geographic how aliens actually built the pyramid shows. And then, obviously, the ice truckers of Antarctica is like, he's sitting there rubbing his thighs for that one that's coming out.
I love that stuff as well.
It's amazing. People with similar facial hair to yourself usually pop up in the ice truckers one.
Oh my gosh, that's a compliment.
We Are Brooklyn Saints.
We Are Brooklyn Saints is out tomorrow as well. I haven't seen this one. I haven't been able to get a hold of the screener, but I'm an absolute sucker for the sports story where it shows like somebody who's really against the odds and trying to do their best. Like Last Chance U was very similar to this format, and it's a Brooklyn team of 7 to 13-year-olds that are coached by the local community. And the whole idea of like it takes a village to raise a child, and they're really invested in trying to give them a good start in life. And a lot of these kids, the only ways they'll get into college is through a football scholarship. So there's one particular kid who's really interested in robotics, but he knows that he's going to have to get a football scholarship to go to be able to study that. And it's very, like in parts of what I've seen, it's kind of sad because you're looking at that part of the life, but it's so inspiring and hopeful. It's a little bit... It's playing to the crowd because I think people at this stage have seen Last Chance U, and like the first series of Last Chance U was so good because it was like they weren't really aware of the cameras, and then the second series is like, oh, we know how famous this can make us, so we're totally going to play up to the cameras. There is an element to that to this, but it's still...
Is there an all-out brawl at the end?
Is there what, sorry?
An all-out brawl at the end. That's what I want. That's what made Last Chance U. It was like, ooh, this is not for the cameras.
Yeah, it was so good, like, but no, this is 7 to 13-year-olds. There's not a brawl at the end. There's a real problem, like. So, no, it's just a feel-good, inspiring, nice documentary. It's 4 parts. It's over about 3 hours, and it's just what people in the community are investing in these kids' lives, and that's actually it's a lovely thing. Like,
can we just briefly talk about the 3 hours, 4 parts thing? There are a lot of things on Netflix that are 5 episodes too long or 4 episodes too long. And you're like, come on, like, why are you making me waste? The Maharaji one, where they go to Oregon and the cult takes over a lot of land, that was like 5 episodes too much. You're like, oh my God, this is so boring. Like, just get on with it. And you stick with it to the end, and you go, that was just a complete waste of time. That could have been a 90-minute documentary, 3 episodes, 3-hour-long episodes I would have been fine with, but it ended up like 7 or 8, and it was like a lot of repetition. So I always think that if this is going to be 2 episodes too much, no thanks. I'd rather not spend the time. There's too much good TV out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think what they have the tendency to do on Netflix is actually make an 8-part series or a 10-part series. And I think the fact that they've gone with the 4 parts just shows that they've really just made it exactly how it's meant to be. The guy who directed it, really interesting. He made a documentary a couple of years ago about his sister. She was on conspiracy charges for something to do with her deceased husband. And it was basically trying to get her out of prison. She served a 15-year term. And it's his sister. So it's this amazing documentary. So I think he's worked as a cinematographer, he's worked as an editor. I think he knows how to make a 4-part without making it too long, you know. Okay, so We Are Brooklyn Saints is what we're recommending. Shiny new thing. Is that out now or out this weekend? It's out tomorrow. Okay, and likewise The Dig. So there are your recommendations. Stuff that you might not have seen, but that is available right there at the moment. I'm going to talk about It's a Sin, which is pretty amazing, really. Like, I've seen some criticism of it from some quarters that
it's too much of a pastiche. The characters, there's a Scottish person, there's a Welsh person, there's an English black person, and there's a woman. They're the kind of four main characters, and you can understand exactly what they did and why they did it. But essentially, it's how the AIDS crisis ripped through the gay community in England, and the complete kind of shrug of the shoulders that they got from official England in particular, and how the people who were responsible for this didn't really care. There's a doctor in it at one point who, when he's asked to give some information, like a leaflet or some advice to a patient, so why do you think I would have that? Kind of, you're suggesting that this is somehow something to do with me as a doctor, and I couldn't possibly be gay, because obviously at the time that would have been frowned upon. Absolutely phenomenal. The music is great. The writing is tight. There's almost no nonsense in it, and we're talking about period stuff, and how, like, I kind of feel like if you're going to do period stuff, it should mean something. It shouldn't just be for titillation and amusement, and this, I'm absolutely happy to say, is an astonishingly well realised period piece. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, I actually watched the first episode of it last night, because a lot of people are talking about it, and I just thought the characters are great. Like, they're really well written. That the black English character, brilliant. Like, that guy is amazing.
Roscoe.
I love the way he went into the sitting room and told his family to basically go to hell. And I don't know if his mother or his aunt, who just starts laughing at his outfit. It's just brilliant. But I think it really does have its place as well. Like, we kind of forget these days that people had to live their lives like that.
So I don't know if everybody watched The Deuce, but there's brilliant brilliant stuff in that about the AIDS crisis in New York, and this is parallel to that, and just how grim the whole thing was, like, and how. So there are details in it that are kind of obviously factual things that did happen to people. Teachers who would be laughed at by their colleagues in the staff room because they were gay, and that they would be taunted openly because they were gay, but they couldn't do anything about it, because to admit that you were gay would have meant that you get sacked. Yeah. There's not a coroner, what do you call people who funeral undertakers who won't take the people who've died of AIDS for fear of getting infected. There were crematoriums who wouldn't cremate the bodies for fear of getting infected. There was another one where they would only bury the people after dark because they were so ashamed for it. It's just absolutely horrific, and it's not very long ago. The story finishes in the mid-90s, but we've all kind of moved on from HIV and the AIDS crisis as this kind of thing that happened, as opposed to actually, how do we stand idly by and watch millions of people die and stigmatise them because of fear and ignorance? So I think it raises a lot of very pertinent questions, particularly at the moment. So it's a sin. All episodes are streaming on all four, and it's really good stuff.
Yeah,
it's also really funny. Sorry, it's really funny in parts as well. So
yeah, it's not really heavy. Like, they are kind of, but the scene in the first episode where the older guy is teaching him how to wash.
Oh my God!
So uncomfortable. I was like, please make this stop. This is awful. And I didn't know where it was going. And I was literally holding the remote in front of the TV, going, I don't know where this is going. I don't want to watch it.
Well, you have a fair idea where it's going.
Anyway, the one that I picked is The Looming Tower. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's on Amazon Prime. It's absolutely excellent. It's probably one of my favourite series in the last few years. It was one that was released in the States in 2018, and then it went on to BBC, I think, last year. And I think a lot of people might have seen it, but it's basically the story behind what happened to the FBI and CIA in the lead up to the 9/11 attacks, and basically how these counter-terrorism departments try to outdo each other all the time. And the two guys who head up the department is John O'Neill in the FBI, who's based on a real person. He's played by Jeff Daniels, and Martin Smith in the CIA, who's played by Peter Sarsgaard. And he's kind of like a fictionalized composite kind of character, but they absolutely hate each other. They will do anything to take the other person down. And that just bleeds into the departments, and the investigation afterwards and the appearances in front of committees is kind of done, and then flashbacks all the way through it. And the last episode is just brilliant. And it's just the one season.
How many episodes?
I think it's 8. But it's 8. Well worth your time. Really, like, it is intricate, a lot of complicated stuff in it, but very, very good.
Watch it with subtitles on. The Looming Tower is the one downside on all four is I can't get subtitles, which is really discombobulating at this point. But The Looming Tower, it's called, and it's on Amazon Prime. Oh, and a 90-second update on where you are in The Sopranos.
Midway through season 6, we're in the midst of the Vito storyline, which to people who watch The Sopranos, I'm sure they know what that is. Literally no spoilers, please, on this. It's one of those, sometimes they have this amazing ability in The Sopranos to open up a storyline at the start of an episode and wrap it all up by the end of an episode. I genuinely thought this is what was going to happen with the Vito storyline, where he would disappear for an episode or two, and then they would wrap it up as they tend to wrap things up in The Sopranos, aka killing off a character in brutal fashion. But this is still going on, this storyline, so I wonder, is there a big twist happening in the next couple of episodes? I will update you next week. It's this cool hip new show coming to a HBO near you called The Sopranos.
You're speeding up. You've got into it now. You're like at the point where you actually feel compelled to watch this stuff.
We've put pressure on him, though. He has to publicly declare.
Well, that is it, actually. So I've got to mark my card every week. I can't savor this anymore. My ratio of actually throwing in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm or throwing in an episode of Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, that ratio has diminished completely, where I'm just on a diet of Sopranos and Sopranos only.
Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, also unbelievable. Like I've yet to find a dud, and I'm working my way through it. So, right, anything else, Sue, that you want to talk about this week?
Nope, that's it. I'll have loads more next week.
Okay, I really want someone else to watch The Deuce. Nobody in Ireland seems to have seen it, and it's really annoying, says Michael on YouTube. I've seen it.
It's brilliant.
It's really good. We could do a whole David Simon week here if you wanted to. I'm a big fan of Generation Kill. Couldn't get into Treme. Obviously, The Wire is nearly as good as, but not quite as good as The Sopranos. Peter Ram says, forget about all this. Get on Married at First Sight Australia, Season 6. It's the job.
Oh, God, terrible.
All right, Michael. Peter Ram.
I'm on board with that. 100% on board with that.
Okay, well, you can come back and report. That's your, after The Sopranos is over, you can do a full week of Married at First Sight Australia, Season 6.
But that's addictive TV. Like, if you start watching that, you'll never be able to stop. Like, it's like Love Island. Once you're invested.
My kids have got into Ireland's Fittest Family. It's
but it's so good. It's so addictive.
How did this happen? What is that? Where did I fail as a parent? Right, that's this week's stuff that you should be watching on TV. Sue's obviously watched some stuff that you haven't seen just yet, and every week we'll come with recommendations, but we're also going to double back on stuff that you might not have seen but should have seen, that we really think is amazing, and that we will happily stand over and fight you if you don't agree with us on that one. OTB AM live every morning. Thanks, Sue. From 7:30 in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Adrian and Eoin are going to be with you tomorrow morning. We've got reaction to Liverpool against Spurs, Alan Quinlan, another part of our OTB Future series, and of course the crappy quiz, which I don't know what's going to happen on the crappy quiz just yet, but I would point out that I'm now the champ. So I hope, Eoin, that you've got some good questions coming our way for tomorrow's show. Let's move on to this story. It's absolutely remarkable. The WWE is recruiting rugby players. We've been shooting to Luke Menzies, a.k.a. Ridge Holland, former rugby pro turned WWE wrestler, and Rugby World Features editor Alan Dimmock, who's been writing about this crossover potential. Enjoy.
Okay, so there is a brilliant piece in this month's edition of Rugby World magazine that focuses on the pathway that has been building from elite rugby to professional wrestling. So to talk about this, we've got Alan Dimmock, who is the features editor, at Rugby World magazine, and the writer of this piece. And we've also got professional wrestler Luke Menzies with us as well, better known as Ridge Holland. Guys, you're very welcome to the show. Thanks a million for joining us. Alan, I might start with you. You've spoken to a number of wrestlers in this piece. You've spoken to Triple H, and there's a real sense that there is genuine interest on their part in rugby players who want to try out in wrestling, because they've got so many attributes that are so necessary for the game.
Yeah, they're constantly looking for talent, and they've got this big division, a global net to try and find folk from all over the world. And why wouldn't they look at athletes from a professional sphere who have all the boxes that they want ticked? You know, they said that if they were looking for the perfect male wrestler, obviously they're looking for women as well, but if they're looking for the perfect male wrestler and they want to put component parts together, they're looking for someone that's in their mid to late 20s, who's, 6'3 plus, weighs, a hefty bunch of kgs, knows how to train hard, knows how to do teamwork, is happy with the life of touring, and, well, lo and behold, that's exactly where rugby falls between those two boundaries. So as an avenue, it's a fantastic way to get the raw materials. But of course, as Luke can attest to, you need the right attitude to do it. You can do all the technical work you want, but realistically, you've got to have the right personality and you've got to have the right sense of salesmanship so that you can really give the audience something to cheer for.
That's a really interesting element of all of this, the attitude and I guess the non-physical components that are required. But we might just stick with the physical elements. Luke, talk us through why you think rugby players are so well suited to this. I know that one of your ambitions in life was always to become a wrestler. So I think you probably had this pathway in your head somewhere down the line.
Yeah, definitely was. It's such a cliche, but a dream of mine. But going back to your question, I think that just rugby players from either code, whether it's league or union, they're big, robust, strong, explosive athletes, and that's everything that we look for in a WWE superstar. And then they're used to the grind, they're used to their bodies hurting. You know, we never really go in the ring 100%. Same as rugby players, we never really truly go on the field at 100%. You know, so we're used to that grind, we're used to our bodies being sore. And in NXT, where I'm at the minute, we have a massive team ethos. We all help each other along, and it's something that I think that rugby players will be drawn to. Is that team environment also as well?
Could you talk us through your path from rugby league player to NXT star?
Yeah. So I had a few clubs in Super League and then a couple of lower league clubs. I was never a world beater, but I was good enough to make a living. I tore my quad playing for Salford. I was on honeymoon in Mexico, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for this. And I saw a tweet from William Regal, and it said anybody looking to get into the business of professional wrestling should look up the coaching services of Marty Jones. Now, Marty Jones was William Regal's trainer back in the day, a British legend. So I emailed him from my bed in Cancun. 2 days later, I was at my first wrestling practice, getting drilled, and then 6 months later, I had a WWE tryout. We had a bit of a hiccup with the visa, so kind of fast forward 18 months, I was at the WWE Performance Centre.
How quickly do you take to it when you talk about that tryout, when you talk about being up against it in those first couple of training sessions? Are you finding it easy in comparison to some of the newcomers?
You know what? People excel at different things, or they pick up things at different rates. But I think with me being an avid fan from being such a young age, I kind of took to it a little bit quicker than what someone would be if they didn't know what it was. But because people do excel at different portions of what we do at different time frames, I've got no real kind of barometer as to how well I did. I just put my nose to the grindstone and just listened and worked hard, and I think things have luckily happened. So,
what are you listening to? What is the specific line of coaching or direction that they're giving you?
Oh wow! So it goes through there's different channels. So when you first get to the Performance Centre, there's the beginners class, which is coached by another Robbie Brookside, and that's fundamentals, basic fundamentals, just learning how to be safe in the ring. And then when you're deemed good enough, you'll go up a tier, then up a tier again, then up a tier again, and with the finishing class being the TV class, which is coached by Shawn Michaels. Then he coaches all the in-between stuff, all the little nuances that you need to make good things great. So you have a real kind of vast learning curve, as it were, working on all the different things, but it's a lot to take in. And I've got notepads, that thick, full of information that I've wrote down and from different classes, just as so I can have a call back if I'm ever struggling or need a reference for something in a match, or so the information that we get is a lot.
And that seems to be the key, Alan. And I'm sure you've heard that in your series of interviews that you've done. Of course, it's a prerequisite to be in great physical shape and to be, I guess, conditioned for years. But it is that willingness to learn that we've heard there from Luke, that willingness to better yourself, which seems to be the most vital component.
Sure, and we, in the process of talking to people about it, we heard a lot about the X factor, the difference maker. That's the difference between taking that step up in the levels and becoming, a primetime recognisable face to becoming, we're used to seeing superstars in movies now and all that sort of stuff. And we hear a lot about the X factor, but you're not always born with that. And a lot of talk that we heard was about how much work goes into that and how much you need to cultivate it. There's a reason, Luke has had to cultivate a character that he embodies when he goes out in the ring. Now, luckily for him, it's embodying the hard-nosed Yorkshireman, which I'm sure comes very natural to him.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of hard work that goes behind that. And what people might not recognise when they flick on the telly or they see the highlights show on a Sunday is that there are hours and hours, weeks and weeks, months and months, even years of hard work that goes into it. And what Triple H said to us when we interviewed him at the start of the piece was, we could probably take someone and give them just the fundamentals to make it technically and get on their way within 6 months to a year. That's great. If you've got all the physical attributes, you've got the right attitude, that's perfect. Then you've got to start adding the layers to that. And that's the bit where, your rugby players will be able to see that and recognise themselves within that. What they have to have is the desire, the belief, the drive, like someone like Luke who says, I have this backstory, I have the desire to make it because I have this long history with it and I want to be part of a legacy. You need to add that. So you can't go into it blindly. So one of the key things about the piece is not sugarcoating it. It's going to be hard when you get into it, but if you come through a professional rugby environment, you are used to that. It is what you make of it. And if you do crack it properly and you give it a bloody good go, the rewards can be fantastic.
How long does it take for you to actually find that X factor then, Luke, to almost stumble upon the identity of the person that you're going to be in the ring?
So it's very dependent on the person. The Performance Center and WWE give you all the tools needed, to bring that out of yourself. But it's almost, a person might be fantastic in the ring technically, but he's not connecting with the crowd. So it might be like a light bulb moment where something goes off and he realises that, hang on, this is who I am, this is who I need to be. This is how I get a reaction from the crowd. This is what they bite on. So it's totally different. It definitely takes a lot of searching. I mean, some people have the charisma first and then they struggle with the technical side of it. Some people have the charisma, the technical side of it, but then they struggle with the psychology. It's okay being learning what to do, but it's knowing, when and where to do it at the correct times to elicit a certain response from the people that are watching. So yeah, it definitely, you definitely go through kind of like an evolution of who you, because who I am now, Ridge Holland, might not be exactly who Ridge Holland is in 5 years' time. So we're always evolving our experiences and things like that. So it's just, I suppose you just got to take everything that you learn and bottle it up and then try to be the most authentic version of yourself, really, because the people can see through it. As soon as you walk through the curtain, you've got about 5 seconds before the people either go, not buying it, or this guy looks all right. And they can see that from your eyes, from your body language.
One of the things that I find interesting doing this piece was considering what rugby union, of course, but a lot of other sports as well, and league falls into this too, is what other sports can learn from wrestling. And one of the things we kept coming back to was the sense of promotion of character and personality. And one of the things that rugby union in particular really butts up against is the idea of promoting itself and stepping outside the realms of the hashtag rugby family, everyone loves each other, we go for a beer after the game, jolly good fun, that's fantastic. Whereas wrestling has embraced this element of promoting characters that might not be who someone is deep down, but everyone knows the conceit there. All the fans know exactly what the score is, and you leave your disbelief at the door because you want to buy in, you want to be entertained. It's the embracing of the entertainment side of things. And what I want to follow up with Luke is how difficult is it to divorce yourself from the team ethos of doing the right things, of the right rugby values, etc., and then going and saying, you know what, I can play the bad guy. I can be the heel here. I can have people booing me because actually that's me doing my job well and it helps sell tickets.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'll always revert back to me being a fan, so I kind of got the dynamic. But if you think about it, whether it's sport, any sport, it's a contest, and there's always going to be, depending what side you're on, there's going to be a hero and there's going to be a villain, and you can bring that from any sport, whether you're a boxer, whether you're an MMA fighter. There's going to be a group of fans that think you're an ace, and there's a group of fighters that want to see you get beat, and so you bring that into what we do, and your mannerisms, how you wrestle and stuff, you use those to elicit that response. If you're the heel, you act accordingly. But yeah, I suppose it can be difficult coming from a strict rugby background to kind of think, okay, well, I need to forget everything that I know and just kind of go against the grain. It is quite a lot to take on. It is very difficult to understand that psychology aspect of it, of good versus evil, but how to portray that to the people as well. Yeah, so that is a tough thing to get.
Could rugby learn a thing or two about that? The promotion of the individual, I guess, the fanfare around the game. Could that be promoted a little bit better?
Me?
Yeah, go for it, Alan. If you've got a thought on that.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I certainly believe so. It's a driving force behind what we're doing in the with the piece in the magazine, is to just make people aware that there are folk that need that help making that step. And I think one of the biggest problems with all forms of rugby, but particularly rugby union, is that people don't like the idea of something fabricated, inauthentic around this historical contest that we've had since the Victorian age, where people are battling against each other, and we all want to do it the right way. Whereas actually we've seen from some other sports, and wrestling has been at the forefront of this, is that you can have both. You know, you can have the physical contest and everyone can respect the athleticism and the endeavour there, but also you can then tack on the storyline afterwards. And that's the real challenge, because we've written about this in a number of different ways, in a number of different features. The biggest challenge for rugby union is to try and break the barrier, to try and get nearer to those other sports, those international sports that don't need any help promoting themselves. Football doesn't need any help promoting itself, really. The characters become massive global names, not by the nature of their personalities or how they promote themselves. That comes later. It's because of the size of the sport and the draw of the contest. Rugby needs to work a bit harder to bridge that gap, because if we go on purely contest alone, it's fantastic and we love it, but it needs that little bit extra to try and sell more tickets, to try and get the bigger TV deals, to try and get the bigger sponsorships. And I'm sure Luke can talk to his views on that.
Yeah, I agree. Even coming from my rugby league background, rugby league tends to be like a small working class town sport and very kind of M62 corridor type. It's very localized and a very regional sport, and it's also it just seems blinded to kind of break out of that working class type grassroots based sport, you know. And I think they can definitely learn from what WWE do for, you know, advertising and building stories, because it's like as you were saying before, you know, it's the storylines that hook people, that make people want to watch the conflict. You look at Muhammad Ali, for instance, or even Conor McGregor more recently. The press conferences with the entertainment, and that hooked you, you know, to want to watch him fight. I just think rugby in general needs to broaden its scope on how to attract new viewers and make it larger than life. And you know, there's always if you don't change, there's always a chance of becoming stale, and I would not want either code of rugby to become stale.
And the thing is that those rivalries that already have a pre-existing storyline are there. You know, in the Pro 14 or Pro 16 as it will be, Leinster-Munster is an enormous fixture. You know, that only needs a little bit more. That only needs the dial turned up a little bit. And you speak to people like Alex Corbisiero, the British and Irish Lion, who flirted with joining the WWE for a while, who's a lifelong wrestling fan. You know, he played in the East Midlands Derby, and he said, the storyline is there. You just need to turn the dial up a bit on it. And that lies with the powers that be, because the athletes are doing their level best to give you the entertainment out in the field.
You should just appoint Eddie Jones as like CEO of World Rugby and leave it at that. Let him stir the pot nicely on every single storyline we have. Yeah. Just to wrap up, Luke, on your own career, your own body at the moment, how are you recovering from the injury? How are things at the moment?
Yeah, things are ticking along nicely. Medical staff's top notch, and I'm 4 months post surgery now, but I'm starting to feel good. I'm back in the gym, starting to feel human again. So hopefully, the doctor said 6 to 9 months. So hopefully, I'll be back in the ring sooner rather than later.
What was the exact injury?
It was on both legs. So it was on the left leg, it was a fractured and dislocated ankle, and on the right, it was a dislocated kneecap and a ruptured patella tendon. So yeah, pretty unusual injury to happen. You know, 2 injuries to happen at the same time like that.
How did it happen?
I was on the floor outside the ring, and my opponent decided it was time for him to jump out of the ring, and I tried to catch him on the floor, and just my left foot wasn't planted right. That snapped, and then that caused the knee to give way. So it was just a freak accident.
Did you know at that moment that you were in a bit of trouble, that it was going to be a bit of a layoff as soon as the impact happened? Yeah.
As soon as it happened, it was like the referees jumped on, and it was like threw the X up, and it was like, yeah, this is done. It was on live TV as well, so which was nice. So yeah.
So what happens next then? How close until you can actually start doing a little bit of contact? You say it was 6 to 9 months in total.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we've got another 4 months.
Right.
Yeah, maybe another 4 months. So we're assessing weekly, you know, about how I'm responding to treatment, and it's kind of a really suck it and see type deal. Really, we've just got to. Like I say, do those weekly reevaluations and see if I'm healing well and see how my movement is, and we'll take it from there. Take it one step at a time.
When you've got that amount of time off, I mean, obviously you're doing your rehab and everything, and something you'll be used to with your career in rugby. But is that a good time for character development, or to have a think about stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a perfect time to, you know, leave no stone, you know, unturned as regards to what you can bring. What depth you can add to your character, what type of things you can do in the ring, how can you make people, you know, believe in you that little bit more, and just studying tape as well as you would do rugby. You know, you would study tape. You would just want to get better at the little things as well, you know, because if you get better at all the little things, they add up, and you become a more polished performer. So it's tape study, it's character development, and then obviously I've got time. Like today, I'm going to NXT TVs. There's tons of people there that I can talk to and pick their brains about certain things. So it is an actual perfect time to take the opportunity to grow as a performer.
What are your ambitions then in the medium term once you are back in the ring?
So the ambition is just to get back in the ring and start throwing people around again. That's the issue. I mean, I gave people a little taste of what Ridge Holland can do, and as soon as I get back, it's time to unleash, you know. And it's I'm looking to take over.
Who else would you like to see in the ring, Alan, from the rugby world over the next couple of years?
Well, look, it's funny when I was speaking to people from the States, they were like, because the big difference actually really is, with all the best will in the world, is an enormous superstar name from rugby union, with the exception of probably a handful, people aren't really going to know who they are in the States. So it's a clean slate for a lot of people to try and make a clean break. That being said, there are some fantastic personalities in rugby union. It's funny, when I was speaking to the folk there about doing this piece, they were like, oh, and you know, if we could try and get someone like Maro Itoje is a really big name, and in fact he's on the front cover of Rugby World this month as well, because we're saying that 2021 is the year of Maro Itoje, and they were saying, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could get him talking about it or interacting with people? And I thought, I think he's got his hands full. Everyone wants him to be the British and Irish Lions captain. I think he's probably a bit busy at the moment.
It depends. If the price is right, I'm sure Maro will probably have to think about it. Listen, you've been listening to Alan Dimmock, who is features editor at Rugby World magazine and writer of this brilliant piece. Make sure to go check it out right now. It's on Rugby World. And Luke Menzies, better known as Ridge Holland. Thanks a million, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. OTB Sports.